Are we all set?
We're on.
Just before we start the meeting, I want to bring up some really good news. The Red Sox last night, they won in 13 innings, and it was 12-11. But I didn't watch it because I went to bed earlier, but they came back in the 10th, 11th, and 12th to tie the game. They won in the 13th inning. And I think that just shows that good, hard work always means we have a comeback. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. I am Ford Spalding, Chair of the FS1 Steering Committee, and I just want to welcome the Select Board members who are joining us, Mary Ann, Joe, and Aaron. With us, we have Town Administrator Connor Reed, Assistant Deputy Town Administrator Molly Fitzpatrick. We also have Fire Chief Steve Lund with us, and many other of the Westwood staff. Also representing our owner's project manager, we have Chad Crittenden, Seamus O'Connor, and Matt Moto. And for Castle Booze, we have Greg Joint and Sean Schnagel. Is that right, Greg?
Yes.
So we want to welcome all, and I want to welcome all that are online watching and will watch, and also the people that are in the room. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, amended on March 28, 2025, Governor Maura Healey signed into law an act extending pandemic-related authorizations related to public meetings, allowing remote meeting options for public bodies through June 30, 2027. Today is August 7, 2026. The FS1 Steering Committee and the Select Board are meeting and will be conducted in both in-person and via remote participation by the committee. The chair grants permission to Allison McCarthy to record the meeting, and anyone else who wishes to record the meeting, please state your name and address. Seeing none, I will now poll the members of the steering committee. Jody Petroselli.
Here.
Ken Ayers.
Here.
And Peter Bean.
Here.
Sarah Cantley.
Here.
Sean Cummings.
Here.
Paul DeLay.
Here.
Nancy James. And
Here.
I am Ford Spalding. Unfortunately, Harry Davis cannot be with us. He's on a family vacation. I'll now turn this section over to Mary Ann.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mary Ann LeBlanc Cummings, Chair of the Westwood Select Board. I will now call this meeting of the Westwood Select Board on August 7, 2026 to order with a roll call as to my colleagues, Joe Prevotera
Here.
and Aaron Sibley.
Here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Public and press. Please limit your comments to 2 minutes and first provide your name and address. I will allow the committee and staff to reply if appropriate, but this is not a time for discussion. Because of the uniqueness of this meeting, sharing it with the select board, this will be the only opportunity for public comments at this meeting. Is there any public comments in the room?
Hi, Katie Willett, 91 Pleasant Hill Street. I just wanted to say that I hope this all works out well and gets passed and gets onto the, we choose a great location. But I did want to just mention one thing regarding the matrix that we have. This is from another parent in town. The updated site matrix comparison. When it comes to the cost and taxpayer alignment, I think those should be separated because they are taxpayer alignment is very important. I think it should be weighted higher. We all believe that it should be weighted higher than what it is as it currently stands on the current matrix.
Thank you. There will be an explanation on that in our presentation.
Great, thank you.
Any others? Any online? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Alice Smith, 78 K Street. I was just wondering when you would anticipate that there would be some detailed plans that we could have available.
The detailed plans will be coming after the town meeting votes to move forward with a plan, and then they're going to be doing a schematic plans.
Okay. The
Well,
schematic
to
will
be-
be before, right?
Yeah, to
Yeah,
be clear,
excuse me, there'll be schematic
schematic design will
plans.
be, yeah, so from here forward, after site selection, it will advance into schematic design. If the project is grouped by voters, then that will enter the project into design development, where permitting, boards, planning, Concom, et cetera, depending on the site, will be reviewing in public meetings and hearings the development of the plans, where the public will continue to have the ability to participate and give feedback. Thank you.
Any others online? Thank you. And we'll now move to the chair's update. On November 17, 2025, the Select Board appointed the Fire Station 1 Steering Committee consisting of myself, Chair, Jody Petroselli, Vice Chair, Ken Ayers, Peter Bean, Sarah Cantley, John Cummings, Harry Davis, Paul DeLay, and Nancy James. I would like to begin by recognizing the significant commitment of each member that is made to this process. Over the past 9 months, this committee has devoted countless hours to reviewing information, attending meetings, participating in site visits, engaging with residents, and thoughtfully evaluating options for Fire Station 1. So thank you all. The Select Board charged the committee with providing an objective, transparent, and community-informed evaluation of potential locations for the future of Fire Station 1. As part of the charge, the committee was tasked with identifying the programmatic needs of the fire department, reviewing technical information and consultant analysis, and developing comprehensive evolution matrix to assess potential sites against a consistent set of criteria. The ultimate goal was to provide a recommendation to the Select Board regarding a preferred site for Fire Station 1. Over the past 9 months, the committee has reviewed multiple technical studies, participated in site visits, heard presentations from consultants and town staff, and carefully evaluated numerous alternatives. We initially considered 8 potential building site configurations, along with several additional locations suggested by residents. Through this process, we narrowed the options to 3 town-owned properties: the current Fire Station 1 site at 637 High Street, the former Deerfield Elementary School site, and parcel 14-131, commonly referred to as behind Starbucks. Since December 1, this committee has held 19 publicly posted and recorded meetings. In addition, members have participated in neighborhood meetings, public forums, and other outreach efforts involving residents from across the community and representing a wide range of perspectives. I would like to recognize the significant efforts of the town staff, many of whom are here this morning. Throughout this process, staff has worked diligently to ensure that residents have access to timely and accurate information through public meetings, social media, print communications, public websites, neighborhood outreach, and direct notification to neighbor abutters. The commitment of transparency has helped the community keep informed and engaged throughout this process. This morning, the committee will complete its review of the site evaluation matrix and deliberate on the 3 finalist locations. At the conclusion of that discussion, we will vote to recommend to the Select Board a preferred site for future Fire Station 1. The Select Board will then consider the recommendations as it determines the location to be advanced forward for our October 26th town meeting. So thank you all. Mary Ann.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. I want to provide a brief update from the Select Board for the benefit of this committee and also all residents. But first, what is more pressing is that I want to say thank you. Thank you to you, the FS1 committee, and especially your leadership, Ford Spalding and Jody Petroselli, for your extraordinary commitment to the FS1 project and your extraordinary public service to the town of Westwood. I have had the opportunity to thank you as a committee during our Select Board meetings, but this is my first opportunity to thank you in person as a committee, and I sincerely thank you all. Last year, voters made clear that our approach and proposal for a new FS1 did not align with their priorities. We took that feedback very seriously. And yet there was a consensus that we need to build a new FS1. And so we decided to start from scratch with a completely new process, one that was clear and open, with a committee that represented a cross-section of the community, including opposition to the prior proposal, and which was open-minded in considering a range of alternatives, a wide range of alternatives. After we announced the formation of this committee, a number of people expressed interest in serving, but a number of them were unable to make the time commitment to this committee. And I don't need to tell the people around this table that this has been a huge time commitment, with many, many meetings, with site visits, with public forums, and with all of the community engagement that you have done. Each of you have made and fulfilled the commitment that you made to this committee, and I'll have more to say about that at the end of this meeting. But for now, I just want to say thank you to you all. We, as a board, have either attended or monitored all of your meetings. I believe we have had an FS1 update at every one of our select board meetings since last September. And again, we thank Ford and Jody for coming to many of those meetings to provide updates from your committee. As you know, in February, the select board approved emergency funding for the temporary tent in light of the failure of the apparatus bay floor at FS1, when the urgency of replacing the station became a true emergency. In the spring, we also authorized pre-feasibility site assessment for the 3 finalist sites. We authorized funding for the development of a strategic capital improvement plan to support long-term planning for our schools and the town in coordination with the long-range planning committee. We partnered with all of you successfully with our town meeting in securing funds for schematic design for the 3 sites recommended for this project. And last week, we voted to place a debt exclusion ballot question on the November 3rd election ballot. And we anticipate that we will hold a special town meeting at the end of October to fully present this project to the voters. It has been said that the strength of a community is reflected in its commitments to those who stand ready to protect it. And I know that as a committee, you have spent a great deal of time with Chief Lund, with our assistant fire chief, with our firefighters at our 2 fire stations. And I know that we all share a commitment to protecting Westwood residents and our public safety personnel who protect us. With that, I will hand this meeting back to Ford and to the members of my board. I will remind you that we will now let the committee go through their process. And then at a time designated by Mr. Chair, we will then have an opportunity to join the discussion. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Marianne. I'm now going to turn the meeting over to PMA Consultants and Galsco Associates for their presentation.
Thank you, Ford, and thank you all for being here and the work that you've done up to this point. This is a very important step in this process, and we've put together with town staff and the project team a fairly extensive presentation reflecting the feedback we've gotten to date, both from committee, from the departments, from town staff, and most importantly, the community at large, to make sure that questions that have been asked, items that have come up in discussion are addressed fully in a presentation for you all to consider as you go into ranking the sites and ultimately choosing the preferred site for your project. So we will just review the process, which all of you have done, prior to us speaking, but there has been an extensive process to go through all 3 options that have been chosen by the committee and ranked, at least initially. There is a dedicated project website for this project so that all of the relevant project information is posted publicly. The programming for the building has been really kind of started from scratch and reinvigorated to recognize a 19% reduction based on feedback from the community, working with fire department staff to ensure that firefighter safety and effective operations are maintained, while still reducing the project scope to ensure that we reflect what the voters chose in the previous version of this project. The steering committee identified a lot of opportunities within the town, and our team, along with the OPM team and town staff, has really worked to consider all of those possibilities and lay out a path forward on each site. Additionally, the Beta Group has completed some traffic analysis out on Route 109, reaffirming what we know is that, one, there's a lot of traffic there, and two, all three sites are still viable. We've presented concepts in a number of public forums, as you've noted, and this is the opportunity to go into site selection. Following site selection, as was noted earlier, we will proceed with conceptual design on that site, followed by schematic design, leading up to that November 3rd vote.
Of the phasing of these projects is once you have those things, you've already picked the site, you've already programmed the building, and there's an understandable feeling from the public sometimes of, well, what am I supposed to do with this now if I don't like it, right? So that there has been, it's one thing for all of us and all of you, and you've all done incredible work on behalf of your community to kind of make those opportunities available. The fact that we had really good turnout at so many of these events from the residents of Westwood is really impressive. And again, it's usually pretty hard to get folks after this much at the table this early before you even pick the site.
I would agree. We, PMA and KBA, do hundreds of these projects, and the early engagement from the citizens here has certainly been among the highest we've seen at this stage in the project. So that's a really great sign that we're getting feedback in any form to make sure that we are able to, one, react to that feedback, take that into account as we move forward, and for all of you to be able to take that in as you make your decisions. We will talk about 3 sites. I will do so hopefully at a high level to make sure we keep the meeting moving forward. 637 High Street is the existing site. For a reminder, there we are proposing a 3-story solution similar to the previous project, about 30,000 square feet. Deerfield Ave, the former elementary school, that site would include a 2-story building, again, about the same programmatic square footage. Lot 14131, the lot commonly referred to as the lot behind Starbucks, again, a 2-story solution, again, at that 30,000 square foot approximate size. We'll go into some additional site-specific considerations to make sure we, give the full committee and the select board all of the feedback we've gotten and how a project may react to that feedback and opportunities and considerations you should make as you go into making your decision. So we will start at the existing site. Again, this is a fairly straightforward solution on this site, given that there are somewhat limited opportunities to do anything much different than you did in the previous project. The project has been reduced in scale, obviously, but the siting of the building is essentially the same because that is really all that site allows. So this includes 5 single-sided apparatus bays that exit directly to High Street and does condense the footprint slightly from the previous project. So it is a viable project that is a 3-story solution. So 2 stories on the High Street side with a story below, much like the previous project was. On the lower level would be the mechanics bay, along with several other functional parts of the mechanics system, building support systems, and some storage bays for apparatus. On the high side, there would be apparatus bay, an entry, and a washroom. All other functions would be above, including the administration and firefighter areas for dorms and living quarters. The proximity to High Street is good. The apparatus bay apron is fairly deep. However, engines can turn around fully on the apron. The ladder truck would likely have to come back out into the travel lane of traffic. So this is a good solution for that site, and the preemption would remain basically in place the way it is now, with some enhancements likely for that. For specific considerations on this site, we were asked, and the town really administration was asked by many residents, whether acquisition of adjacent properties had been explored. I think we can say that that has been explored, and at this time there was no opportunity for acquisition by those residents. Connor, feel free to add.
Yeah,
anything.
I think just, the short answer when folks ask, has the town thought, the immediate abutting properties, is there an opportunity to expand there rather than have to consider off-site for more land? The answer is yes, we thought of it. No, there's no confirmed interest. And so for purposes of site selection, while, the window of opportunity is always open, right now we have no confirmed interest. And so when you're considering this site, it should be as is.
Another question that had come up relates to PFAS abatement and demolition within the rough order of magnitude costing that our teams have provided. We wanted to be clear about why these costs are included in this option and not in the other options. So to be clear, the demolition cost is a necessity in building on this site. We have to remove the existing building in order to build the new building. That is also a potential in other scenarios, but is not really a necessity to build those other options, and is a bit premature given that the town would have to somehow vote in reuse of that property. For PFAS contamination, the town has identified contaminants within that site that are going to be remediated under DEP guidance in situ. So on the site, in the process of remediating those without any construction, you can do that. Once that site is chosen for construction and we go into construction, it necessitates us managing soils. When we are managing soils that are contaminated, it is highly likely that we will have to remove some of those soils and remove them to an offsite location and properly dispose of them. There is a cost associated with that is separate from the in situ remediation that the town is pursuing under kind of a separate process. We, as a project team, believe that is necessary. It will be costs that are included in the bid for the project, and would be difficult to appropriate some other way. It's just not really an appropriate way to go about those costs. They are unique to this site in that other sites don't require you to move the soils from this site without any other action. Together, the site remediation on 637 High Street and the abatement and demolition are approximately $1 million. That can be taken in to your considerations when we get to the rough order of magnitudes, but that is the number assigned by the project team to where we feel is a responsible value to those costs at this time. I will note, while it's up on the screen, there is additional remediation costs associated with lot 14131, given that the access would require some taking of a former gas station site, and that those things are somewhat unknown. We've accounted for the risk to make sure that the town is protected should you choose to move forward with that site. The site layout that we've proposed does reestablish the drive lane from the rear of the site up to the front of the site. This site layout does depict a two-way drive lane. There has been concern raised about the ability to maintain that through further design development. Our team has worked hard to get to an answer on whether we could maintain that drive lane or not. We feel fairly confident that we can, and there are a number of zoning variances currently in place for that site that allow us to move back into some of those setbacks to maintain that. Given that we are early in the design phase, it is kind of premature to guarantee that. So we've looked for alternative ways to allow for the drive lane to maintain. The first step would be going into some of those side yard setbacks. The second step would potentially be reducing the front apparatus bay line to 4 bays while allowing for some storage bays on the lower level that could then come out around the building and exit onto High Street. We hope we don't have to get there. We are fairly confident that we won't. But in order to maintain that drive lane, we feel like there are multiple avenues during design where we can maintain that drive lane and gain back the access from the rear of the site to the front of the site.
Yeah, I think when people hear solutions or concepts like that, I think the natural question is, have we coordinated with fire department? And the answer is yes, and speaking to the chief. And it's hard to read the text on screen, but it's important to point out, what KBA is highlighting is that is something that from a building layout could be feasible, but is certainly not optimal from an emergency response perspective. But it could be achievable. So the site is picked as design iterates that, if this concept ends up becoming too challenging, I think from the zoning at that standpoint, that is I guess a lever that could be pulled.
I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. I think what you're saying is if this site is chosen and the determination is made that the access road to the rear is necessary, there's a possibility that you'd have to design the building in a different way, and it can be done, but it's going to affect functionality.
I think that's fair, Chief.
Yeah, and Jody, I would say that we're doing high level, large scale layouts. We're looking at what we think, we know the size of the apparatus bay we need. We know the size of the setbacks, the buffers, all the things that go into the regulatory requirements. What we haven't done yet is fully design a building. So when we get into fully designing the building, we have a couple levers that we can pull to maintain that access way. The first is to take advantage of the previously granted variances. The second is looking at things we can reduce in the building to kind of shrink that first floor, that main floor plan. And the third is looking at programmatically moving things around within the building. I would say those go in order of preference and what we would do. But yes, it is width-wise a challenging site because just in terms of the sheer width, but also because you only have really one way to come out of the apparatus bays. So that, really makes the 5-bay scenario ideal here on this site. And when we get to the other sites, we can talk about why potentially going to 4 bays works there when it doesn't.
I just want to make sure, because I think it's important. Building a fire station on the existing site with 4 bays negatively impacts our ability to meet programmatic needs in a way that none of the other sites do, and the 5-bay fire station on this site doesn't.
Correct. And we just talked about zoning, so we'll transition right into the zoning variances that are currently in place. The variances that are in place are listed here. They include building height, building coverage, maximum impervious surface area, minimum north side yard setback, minimum south side yard setback, parking within the front yard setback, and parking within the rear yard setback. In almost every case, we would still need these variances in place to pursue a building on this site. with some modification. The minimum north setback, we believe will still require that, but we think we can do slightly better than the previous project version. On the minimum south side yard setback, so the side where that roadway is, we potentially will not require that. If we get the roadway in there, that puts the building out of that south side yard setback. But all the other variances that are currently in place in that site will still be required for a new project, even at a reduced size. The site is just simply not big enough to avoid these variances.
Could somebody challenge the variances and delay this project even out further?
Depending on the modifications to design and the determination of the building inspector on what the revised version entails. So whether it's a modification, an amendment, or a new application would determine how those challenges would be regulated.
Is there a time limit between when a zoning variance is approved, appealed, the appeal is maintained by the zoning board of appeals, between when that happens and anyone that wants to file can file in Superior Court?
I don't know.
Like, and Nora is also on the call.
Oh, she is.
Yeah.
There is, but it can be extended by the permit granting authority, so by the ZBA. So, and there's some changes that just went into effect at the state level for how long that can be. It used to be, it was good for a year unless acted upon, could be extended for up to 2 years after.
You're talking
that.
about the variance.
Correct.
No, my question was a little different. So right now we're in a situation where we got variances. Some people appealed the granting of
Right.
variances that the zoning board of appeals listened to that. They upheld it. And then the next step is to file a lawsuit with Superior Court if you disagree with what the zoning board of appeals did.
Right. So my understanding, and not town council, forgive me on this, is that that appeal
Yeah.
was settled, and so those individuals can't
Right.
move forward with a lawsuit.
Right.
No matter what. So there is no timing on that.
But my question is, can others?
So it would be very difficult to sell that they did not appeal the original variances and then file a lawsuit.
Okay.
So I don't know all the legal intricacies of that, but it would be difficult to go straight to Superior Court and say we would like to now file suit, even though we didn't appeal.
But there's a time factor in all this, which is
So on
related to
the,
project.
on the variances themselves, yes, there is a time factor, but that can be extended by the permit granting authority, the zoning board of appeals. It used to be, it was good for a year, could be extended for up to 2 years. There's now some new language that came out from the state that was effective July 1 that has pushed that out to up to 4 years. People are still trying to digest exactly what those changes in the laws mean because they haven't been fully flushed out yet. Basically, we need somebody to sue somebody and have some case law behind it, but it's a lot of minutia in there.
Nora can probably add to.
Nora?
Yes, I just wanted to add, so if this application goes, if this site is chosen and you apply to the zoning board for amendments to the original approval design to change to a new design, those amendments could be considered by the zoning board at a public hearing, and there would be a 20-day appeal period on those amendments. It would be the same project, just an amended version. It would reintroduce the appeal period. So anyone who hadn't been subject to the settlement agreement would be eligible to appeal.
Thank you.
And I will say also, just to touch on what an amendment or a modification of those previously granted variances is. I mean, the layout that's been shown on the screen today is similar to the previous design. That's a justification for a modification to those previously granted variants, as opposed to if you flip the orientation of the building and, you know, now we're heading out the different side of the building, or you're much taller, or you move things back and this, that, and the other thing. That's a different project. That would be a different sort of application process as that. would go forward. But the way it stands right now, especially if they are lessening the impacts for those variances that were granted, those would be modifications.
Thank you.
A question has come up and is fairly common in projects like this is, well, what would happen to the existing site if this building or the functions in this building were moved to another location? And, you know, at this time, no decision has been made, and obviously it would be premature to make that decision prior to you all selecting a site. The existing station would remain obviously in the town's real estate portfolio. Any action on publicly owned real estate is a public matter. You know, Connor, I'll let you kind of finish the thought off on that.
Sure. So it's a good question. It's come up in the forums. And so because we haven't even reached a point of deciding which site there is, right? It's understandable folks want to see as many long-term contingencies planned for, but it would be inappropriate for us to have a plan to repurpose FS1 for something else when we're not even at a point of voters approving. So we're not at a point of this body choosing a site that's not FS1. And then from there, after the election, seeing if it actually goes through. When you look at a rough order of magnitude cost, one of the things unique to the existing site is the necessity of temporary operations, because you would have the fire department off the site while you rebuild this site. Those costs are not carried at either Deerfield or the lot behind Starbucks, because the fire department would just continue operating out of FS1 while the new building is built. As we showed last week, conservative estimates, construction would be going well into 2029. So if the select board, FS1 steering, pick a different site, and then voters authorize that project, you would have basically a 2 to 3 year runway where you could engage in a public planning process on what does the select board and the community think is the highest and best reuse of that site. That could either be keeping it as part of the public real estate portfolio, as Greg has said, whether that's going to be potential opportunity for reuse or holding on to it because we know we have many other building needs in town, and real estate or land there's not more of it getting made, or it could be a determination that that the community would be better served by a sale of that then vacant fire station for some type of redevelopment. All of those things would have to go through a very public process, especially if you're going to consider sale, even if it's a vacant property that's no longer being used operationally by a fire department. You still need to go through the town meeting process and get a 2/3 approval from the voters of Westwood at a town meeting to authorize sale of a property. And then there's even more process after that, because we are government after all, and we would have to put it out to a bid that's public, with the standards of that bid and how the select board would award the sale public. So there's a lot of process, but really it's also a lot of opportunity, and it would all be public. And then there was a secondary question of, well, what is the site zoned as? And Mike, jump in if I get this wrong, but the site is currently single residence C. There's an overlay district that's upper story residential overlay. I think most important thing is, just by virtue of it being vacated doesn't mean it automatically turns into something else. And absent a zoning change, which would take a 2/3 vote of town meeting, if this property were to be listed for sale, it would either have to comply in its reuse with what the zoning is, or it would need to be seeking variances.
Right.
Which
And
would
so,
have its own process.
you're correct, in the zoning in the overlay district, the single residency zone allows for single family residence only by right. There are some other exempt uses, things like nonprofit education, childcare, things of that nature. Municipal facilities can go there by right. So if the town were to sell that piece of property to somebody in the zoning state as it was right now, you would either get a single family house by right on the site. You would get something like a daycare or a nonprofit educational use there also by right. The same zoning setbacks dimensionally would apply. And then the upper story residential overlay district allows for something like a ground floor commercial space with upper level residential, that has to go through planning board process. So there's a little bit more review and say, I guess I would say, on that. It's not just file a building permit. You can do that. There's a process through. But again, if the zoning were to change or an overlay district were to be extended from further down on High Street, either local business or another, mixed use overlay district or something like that, again, that would go through the whole town meeting process. It would be a public discussion at that point.
And then just to kind of pull it back to the question that's come up of why aren't we carrying demolition or abatement costs in all three, that in and of itself is kind of a program or policy level decision that if a different site is chosen for FS1, the kind of first question for the town and the community is, do we want to keep the existing FS1 site as part of public property? And then if you're going to go through sale, there are kind of a variety of decision trees, including would you, for the sake of perhaps trying to make it more attractive, would the town demolish and abate the site? That's an option. You would have to go through town meeting, things of that nature. But again, that's an option. It's not necessary. An alternative that communities often do is much like if you're selling your house with a failed septic or a roof that needs to be replaced, is that you can put that cost is going to get washed out in the transaction, right? So for round numbers, the site's worth $10. Abating it's going to cost $5. If you don't want to municipally go through the abatement and demolition, you just list that straight in the invitation complaints that the site is as is, and that the town is willing to make reasonable trade for the value based on verified abatement and demolition costs that the new purchaser would then bear rather than the public. And whether it's private or the town doing it, they would still have to comply with environmental regulations to do it right.
And that property's never been appraised during this process, right?
No,
It wasn't last year.
I would look to the rest of the team for the.
It was not.
No.
So we'll just run back through the initial site layout that you've all seen previously. This is our initial site layout that oriented the building on a north-south access on Deerfield.
Before you go to the next site, can you just briefly explain if the High Street location was picked, where would it move to temporarily for operations?
So, to Chief and Molly, but the last project plan contemplated both temporary garaging and living quarters at the Legion site, which is now town owned.
Correct.
Obviously, since then, the apparatus bay has failed, and we now have a temporary tent garage structure. When that was getting purchased, we made sure that it's something that could be picked up and not without effort, but picked up and relocated. So that would be exactly where that goes. Would be part of the design development, but I think that you would be looking at either the Legion in some way or potentially Deerfield.
So we'll move to the Deerfield app site. Deerfield app site original layout oriented the building on the north-south access with potential exits either to a leg of that site that extends to High Street. So first leg here, which is part of that parcel. Secondly, out the extension of Deerfield Ave and out through an existing exit adjacent to the police department on police department property. This option does look at extending or widening that curb cut at the police department property. This also allows for access, should it be necessary, up through Westwood Glen in the event that one of these exits or two of these exits became blocked. It's always ideal in these cases to have multiple ways for the fire department to egress from their site with apparatus. It is, a best practice, and if we can get that, we always prefer to do so. This site and the existing site both allow for that in some way. The considerations is there is some small pockets of wetlands both here and off-site a little bit that do affect the site, but they are relatively minor in scope and scale and can be adequately addressed through the permitting process. Looking at
Which is why you're cutting out the corner, not straight across.
exactly, the pocket of wetland is kind of in that little triangle to the north of the building, and it's there.
When you say adequately addressed, if this site is chosen, does that include leaving open the option of relocating those wetlands so that the access and parking of this site and even the location of the building can be potentially adjusted?
I would say that yes, it leaves that option open, though if we could avoid relocating wetlands, we would always prefer to do so. Relocating wetlands is just somewhat difficult sometimes and just is inconvenient, though when necessary, we can certainly do it and do it successfully. It does take some continued maintenance on the town's behalf to make sure that not only are they relocated, but they then thrive and stick. So it's something that we do on projects because it's necessary. Many municipal buildings, to no one's surprise, were developed in former wetlands that would have been filled in. And so when we go back and have to address that on existing sites, we often do that. You likely have some of that here. And so, we can certainly do that, Joe.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but conceptual layouts we're working with. So one of the things that we did in advance of even bringing PMA and KBA on board was have Weston and Sampson go flag and delineate and map the wetlands on and other various environmental items on site. This concept is not leaning on tons of wetland replication.
Now, this avoids wetland replication. We likely will have to go for Conservation Commission because we are in close proximity to a wetland. So it's likely we will have to do that, but we are not building in a real meaningful way within the buffers. I think probably some of the parking will end up in some of the buffers, and we will go and address that to make sure that it's adequately done and responsible. But the concepts that we're showing currently, Jody, do not predicate moving the wetlands to this point. We have done the survey for this site because of some of the site constraints, particularly of the extension that goes to High Street. That extension is wide enough to fit an exit-only road, approximately 14 feet wide. Within that, it would require widening the curb cut at High Street, but we don't anticipate that requiring any takings at that point to widen that curb cut to make the exit effective. That would also bring with it preemption lights, as you have now on High Street, to make sure fire apparatus could exit safely. Knowing that is a relatively narrow leg that extends between two residential properties, the team looked for alternatives with the fire department to see if there were better ways to get the fire department apparatus out in the response scenario. That lane next to the police department was identified. That is a exit only lane right now. That's about 14 feet wide. It is up against the southern property line of the police department property. And so in order to widen that curb cut and make for more effective exiting of the fire apparatus, we would extend that lane to the north, approximately 10 feet, giving you a much wider curb cut there so that apparatus could make a more effective turn to the south primarily. That gives better visibility, better turning radius, and just a safer, overall exiting at that point. Again, preemption lights to stop traffic would be continued there with that kind of like box out zone. And those lights could also be utilized for police responses. Though police don't typically respond from the station, sometimes they are there. Those preemption lights would also work on Opticon for them, making their exits more effective.
just Greg again, because I don't want to take for granted that folks maybe watching or watch after can see all the text on screen. One of the factors here with where we were last Monday with the concept level designs is that they can still shift, right? And depending on which site, there's more opportunity to incorporate feedback and make some changes. And so both the actual residents, but just generally in the community, there was a lot of concern raised about using, although it wouldn't require taking, and it is town-owned property, primarily sending the fire department out that leg going west to High Street. And so, the design team and Chief Lund looked at, could you have the primary fire department exit going out through the existing police access road with a widened curb cut, and potentially, we're all trying to balance a lot of different things here, right? What may be the absolute optimal straight run to High Street may, if there's an alternative that's 15 or so seconds different, allow the opportunity of that existing what people use as a walking path. Where I think if the site is chosen, we, correct me if I'm wrong, we wouldn't kind of at this point say you would never have any use of that leg, but you could do things like have permeable pavers there where it's still not the primary dispatch of the fire department, but in the event of some severe, really bad weather event where trees are down on the police department access road at Westwood Glen, that they could slowly go out that way without having it be the primary exit.
Yeah, and great explanation, Connor. And this is just a clip of the survey to date, delineating here where the wetlands actually are. This long red arrow here is that exit way out through the police department. And here on the right is kind of a depiction of that existing access way there. And in yellow here, where we would have to extend and widen that to make that fire apparatus, exiting safer. Again, the preemption lights and kind of a block the box would be out in the roadway, making sure that that area is held clear for apparatus leaving the station. Every other turning movement in that line seems very reasonable to us. I know the chief has driven it. I know the assistant chief has driven it to judge their thoughts on effective time response, and I think we're in agreement that we feel that this is a viable option if this site is chosen. We did get a lot of feedback on dead ending Deerfield Ave. Deerfield Ave was originally a dead end. It was extended to Westwood Glen to help the traffic on Deerfield Ave, mostly associated with the previously occupied school building. There is parking off of the roadway to the north of the building here. But we got some feedback from the abutters and just the general public that was, I'd say, mixed at best. Many strongly opposed dead ending that road. I think folks like flexibility of going out of Deerfield Ave in both directions. And, programmatically, that is not required on this site. That is a decision that can be made down the road with more appropriate feedback. Nothing about this site necessitates the dead ending of Deerfield Ave. We did it because we thought that the through traffic was problematic for folks on Deerfield Ave. It seems like it's not as problematic as we had assumed, and that this may be an opportunity to just maintain the roadway as it exists. That, however, I will just point out, doesn't alleviate or restrict the chief's ability to put in place policy that determines where responses go. And I think the chief is committed strongly to making sure that policy is in place if this site is chosen to prefer the response through, like the police department access way to High Street for all emergency responses that were not on Deerfield Ave or some adjacent, area that, is not, in the situation where somehow those primary accesses are blocked. So the Deerfield Ave folks can know that emergency responses through their neighborhood on a daily basis is just not likely. It's not a thing that the fire department wants to do. It's a very narrow road, and policy can be put in place to avoid that, unless absolutely necessary.
Is it right, Greg, that, our chief, I really do, is it right that as you depart a station, if that station is there, you don't turn on your lights and you don't horns until you reach High Street and you're out the street, which is the same policy as we do today?
Yeah, until you need to. I mean, if someone's parked in the middle of Deerfield Ave, you gotta do what you gotta do, but so I don't wanna say never, but yes, that's the policy.
So, given the feedback on this site, we've looked at what it might look like if you don't use the extension down to High Street on the existing site, and if you don't dead end Deerfield Ave, and look at reorienting the building to an east-west access, or primarily east-west access, and segregating that a little bit from that exit that is part of the site. Again, these are not fully fleshed out designs. These are conceptual level layouts that help inform the conversation here about site selection, so that folks understand kind of what's possible on each site. This alternative looks at no exit through that High Street frontage. That could be, either, as Connor suggested, paved in a way where you could get emergency vehicles out, but looks like a path, greenway, fairly typical in a secondary or third, access way to a public safety facility. It's also likely that these things exist around town in other ways where you kind of just don't notice them. This does not dead end Deerfield Ave. It keeps it in its basically existing format as it currently exists. It does rotate the building. And just to note on this site, right, we have proposed or showed in the layout two opposing softball fields with a multi-sport field in between. That also includes, based on community feedback, and I think a lot of folks are use it, a walking circuit around. The current walking circuit we'll talk about in a minute is about a third of a mile. We can get about a quarter-mile circuit here, so similar to a track. The layout and everything that goes into those is conceptual level and is able to be flexible in the continued design process. We'll get into some of those items coming up here. So, Joe, you asked for a accounting of what was there recreationally. So, current site has a little over 3 1/3 acres that is athletic fields. The new proposal would be just under 3 acres of athletic fields. That's not like a 1-for-1 to building area to fields, because we have extended the fields in some way into some paved areas adjacent to the back of the school building. Multi-purpose fields are grass only. In the new option, we can get about a 228 by 206 field. So that's with no overlap into the softball infields. Field 2, it's included in the layout. The softball fields currently are not regulation size. If, through the design process, softball fields were chosen. One field currently plays at 150 feet down the first baseline. The other plays at about 200 feet down the third baseline. So those are the restricted, the short areas of the field. A regulation softball field is about 235 feet down both lines. In each case, we could get those fields to regulation size by, again, taking over some of that paved area in the rear of the school. The playground would remain. The condition of it has seen better days, but the area, we'll say, is basically the same. The basketball court could be removed, and we can take a look at the condition, or it could be repurposed in some other way for that area. The parking in the rear of the building drops by about 32 spots, but in the other areas of the existing site, it would stay as it is today. And there's really some potential there where some of the areas could potentially be expanded. The walking circuit is currently a third of a mile, as I mentioned. Depending on the layout, we could get between a quarter of a mile and a third of a mile for a walking circuit there. Again, this isn't a track, right? It is a gravel, decomposed granite walking circuit for folks to walk on in a measured way. Modular buildings that exist today are proposed to be removed. That's how we can get those fields to be a little bit bigger and to be regulation size. PowerPoint to catch up. The field drainage has been brought up, and the stormwater generally on this site has been brought up through community feedback. There is some drainage on this site through local area drains. So basically catch basins, and, you can see here, it's sort of in or adjacent to the playing area. So not an ideal solution that, from my understanding, goes to basically dry wells there. So just kind of a big hole in the ground that allows the water to come off the surface, go in and infiltrate into the subsurface condition. There's been a number of noted stormwater control, runoff, and flooding issues also associated with groundwater here. Flooding is a very specific term. This area is not in a flood zone, so just for the board's broader understanding, this is not in a flood zone. However, the soils here, again, likely as a former filled-in wetland, do have some issues with stormwater. These pictures were taken. Yeah, play that one. I just need.
So while Greg's plugging in, one of the things that came up was a question around, historical renovations over time with the fields and whether or not through the design development process that the site is selected, there could actually be some improvement with stormwater management. And so there's those dry wells there. We looked at this with inspectional services, but that's not like an engineered stormwater control system, right? Which, if this site was picked to move forward, you would have an actual engineered stormwater.
When they
control
built that,
system.
to be clear, there was no stormwater engineering at all. But the new fields would have that and help alleviate some of the that people are experiencing.
Yeah, when we develop a natural grass playing field, we would do some under drain systems there. Fields are large, fairly flat areas. We want them to be fairly flat areas for playability, safety, and all these other reasons. These pictures were taken after your select board meeting the other night when we had a bit of a rainstorm. Joe asked, so I went out there to make sure we had this stuff. There is a lot of standing water out on that site after rain. That water tends to stay in that top surface of those fields, likely for a number of reasons. One is grading. Two is just the actual soils that are there. And three, there is no under drain system there other than these kind of like area drains and catch basins, which certainly help. But without fully redeveloping the field, it's hard to kind of manage those things. We would likely take kind of a multi-pronged approach that starts with grading. That's the easiest thing that we can do. Secondly goes to soil amendments, so making that soil more free draining.
And that would probably be adding sand.
Adding sand or gravel to the lower levels, and then third, giving the water that gets through some area to go to be retained or then infiltrated in the field area, so that you get not only a better condition just broadly, but you get safer playing fields in the end. So
Because you wouldn't have a 2 by 2 foot steel grading on top where everybody's running.
sure, again, didn't want to be too critical, but
No, I was
that's
coaching
like,
there,
yeah.
and one of the kids got
Yeah.
hurt right on that one you're showing.
Yeah, so if you were going to go into a development of those fields, we would start with engaging with the recreation department and making sure that the program that we're developing on those fields reflects what the needs are in town, gives the opportunity for more feedback from the community, because I think it's one of those things where it's a big community use. We want to make sure we get it right if the site is selected, and it gives the ability to segregate those uses from the fire department uses, making sure that we keep the fire department, effective in their ability to respond, but the public safe in making sure that they can get to those, really critical public resources that are part of that site.
So, do you have a question?
No, I was just gonna expand on the rec and WMC pieces with the modulars, but I could.
Just a quick question relative to parking. So we're losing some spaces, but it sounds like there's opportunity to maybe incorporate parking, so we might not be at a net loss.
So let me just back up, Nancy. We'll just use this scenario. So in this scenario, total parking on the site stays about the same because we're adding firefighter parking and we're adding some public parking associated with the fire department. The town does now own the Legion across the street. And this proposes a sidewalk extending to the Legion, as well as a crosswalk crossing beyond the apparatus bay exit. So to the east of the apparatus bay exit. So folks would follow the sidewalk down across the street from where the fire department is and cross the pedestrian access into the site, kind of beyond where the apparatus bay would exit out to, where apparatus would exit onto Deerfield Ave and then down to the police department. So, by segregating the pedestrian use and the emergency response, we're trying to make sure that the access is maintained, but also that, we're safely operating. That said, I'll finish in a minute, Connor, there is a great deal of the site remaining that is not really contemplated in these options that has the ability to be altered in a relatively easy way to increase parking, to increase the accessibility to that existing building with a relatively low lift.
That's helpful, thank you. And I think just part of the challenge is it's hard, it's so early, we don't have full designs, so just trying to picture. I just wouldn't want people to think that we're losing things without knowing that there's a potential opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. This site, just because of its size, has a wider range of opportunity than some of the other sites. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's the site that is most advantageous. It just means that because of the size, you just have the ability to do things or different things or different versions. When in other sites, particularly the existing site, you really only have one kind of solution, though it can have a little bit of development into it. There's not the ability, as Mike had said, to flip the building, to reorient it, to do those things. It just doesn't exist on those sites, which is fine. It just is what it is based on each individual site.
Thank you.
But for our purposes, we know that some good fields would go in there if fire station would have been put on that site, because the whole thing would be part and parcel of the project.
Correct. And I think to Nancy's point, it's both a challenge, but it's also an opportunity that because you are not fully designed, it still creates ample runway if the site is picked, opportunity for engagement with the recreation department, with little leagues, sports. It's the optimal recreational layout there. 2 softball fields. I have no idea. I'm the first to admit that, right? But there's a lot of people in town who do. And there's space there where you could kind of work that. And so this week we also did a kind of site walk with recreation department leadership and staff from WMC, because obviously the modulars currently leased to the media center, and not just the kind of exterior of the recreation department, rather extensively, especially in the summer, uses the inside of the former school for a lot of programming. And so really kind of walked through and had it pointed out to us, facilities, inspectional staff, this is what we use as park, this is what, is not currently being used. They identified some of the specific concerns shown up on the screen as far as, as it currently exists with the parking in the back of the building is often used for drop off. And while it's great to have that access, it's not necessarily, we were designing it today, a super optimal way to have littles getting out of your cars. So we would, if this is picked, work really closely with the rec department, fire department, the community to see, with the space that is there, what are the opportunities and trade-offs where we want to make sure we maintain good site access both to the fields, but also for the flex uses that go on inside of the current building, right? And so we walked the interior of the building with REC and with WMC to understand in the rough order of magnitude cost. There was a price, I think it was 500,000 carried for relocation and removal of modulars. Is there enough kind of vacant class space inside of that building where, being careful with code and all that, we could replicate the square footage of those modulars for WMC inside the building. And again, preliminarily, the feeling is that that's likely. There's opportunity outside, working with the community and rec and sports leagues to see this is a site that's going to do the right thing with those fields. And there's opportunity inside the building as well to make sure that a recreation department's summer programming and after preschool and potentially WMC, that there's continued good coordination and opportunity there.
This is very specific, but if the walking track was reduced to a quarter mile, could it be more almost like an official running track that could be used for athletic purposes?
I would say at this point we are very preliminary, but to put in a full-scale track there is kind of unlikely based on just the geometry of the existing site. I don't want to say it's not possible, but in terms of what currently exists there, I would say it's probably not what most of the town uses that for, or most of the community uses it for. And the cost that we propose doesn't think about a full athletic track. And the width of a full athletic track would reduce your amount of actual field space because
that's just a bias that I
yeah.
Don't worry about it.
But
Paul wants to run.
But yes,
it also precludes a softball field option, right?
Yeah, certainly it would preclude a softball option, and so
maybe something more informal.
Yeah, so just
Well, you have a field across the street.
Oh, I have a track.
That green square, is that a football field?
So it's like a multi-sport field, so it wouldn't be a
120
full
yards.
football field probably, but so I think it was like 280 feet or something like that. So like soccer field, it could be used for lacrosse, it could be used for a number of different sports. It would likely not be like a regulation field because you're kind of in the middle of a field, but for recreation games, for all the all the non governed events, that's a great place for practices for all the other things.
Well, just visually, like what,
Yeah,
50 yards wide?
Yeah, it's around the size of a soccer pitcher. And Connor did cover the modulars. I just wanted to point out that these modulars are really at the end of their useful lives anyway. Not knocking on your real estate portfolio, but these things have a longevity. I think you've certainly gotten the value out of them that you've expected, and they're really ready to be something removed and to be back into a real building.
Is there any cost associated with mitigation and anything in that?
So we do have $500,000 in the rough order of magnitude associated with the removal of those and the relocation of the things that are in it into another building, most likely.
But there's no hazardous materials.
No, given the age of these buildings, anything's possible, but this is more typical demolition than an older building where we would have much more abatement.
There's really no foundation.
Yeah.
And to be clear, we're talking modulars, not that. Right.
Yes, just these modulars.
That's something that's come up a lot where the early concepts, including the things that are online for all three sites, right? There's a lot of qualifying language around, may be able to move the project forward without demolishing the building. And again, I don't know, you don't. I'm not criticizing you. It's a very robust slide deck, but one of the things that I think the commute through these boards and town leadership that KBA understands, we view as programmatically extremely important if the site is picked is that the existing building not be demolished, right? Because town IT is in there right now. Recreation uses it extensively. So that is baked into the plans at this point. And if the site is selected, much like if the existing site is selected, if as the KBA and the team start getting into design development, unexpected things pop up, they have options to consider reorienting of FS1 or to preserve that building. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay.
We'll move on to lot 14-131. There were, I'd say, less questions and comments about this site, but there were some that I think are important to address. Most of you remember the layout. It includes a taking for an easement through the existing fire station, the existing gas station, up to kind of the plateau of that lot in the rear, kind of adjacent to the Russell Ave, making this, again, like Deerfield Ave, a 4-bay layout that exits on both sides. So you have an apparatus bay that has the ability to exit from both ends. That kind of allows the department to be much more flexible in their apparatus layout within the building, and therefore able to reduce one bay size. I'll just note that we have not reduced the overall square footage in what we have presented programmatically and within the rough order of magnitudes. If you look in the rough order of magnitude costing, the 3 buildings are essentially kept at the same value to not prefer one site over the other. It is likely that the overall square footage would lower on the 2 not existing sites, and therefore the cost would be slightly lower. We feel that the rough order of magnitude costing for all of these are reasonable for the stage of development that we're at. But just as a committee, you should know that when we're looking at these things, you're likely to save 500 to 1,000 square feet on these 2 options, because the apparatus bay is able to exit on both sides and therefore can be just more efficient. I will say that there is some grading that has to be dealt with on the entryway. The site itself is relatively flat at the top where we're developing, but that entryway up it's elevated from High Street about anywhere between 8 and 12 feet up to the site. There are wetlands to the far east side of the site that really doesn't affect the development, but in many ways that is kind of restricted area, so we can't move this really farther to the back. Not that you necessarily want to, but that area is just not really developed. This site does require easements for access. The site currently has 2 existing easements, one on 738 High Street, so that's the optometrist office. There is a 10-foot easement on that parcel that allows for access to the site. That, along with a potential taking on 722 High Street, so the global gas station there, would be the primary access onto this site. It is the most realistic way to get back to the site in these scenarios to get to the developable area. That easement on 722 High Street is not owned by the town and not currently in place. You would have to do a taking for that. Connor, I'll throw it to you to expand on that a bit.
Sure. So a couple of things that are important here when it comes to both consideration for this site for FS1, but also just in the future. The site kind of sometimes gets commonly referred to as landlocked because there's not a explicit paved path to it. But part of this, we did the title search, that that land is town land. It is publicly owned land. There are easements and legal rights to access that site. So from a legal and technical standpoint, it's not landlocked. For purposes of this project, as we've shown through the concepts, neither of those are really optimal or operational for the width necessary for a two-way in and out for a fire station. And so that red box there has always been what was kind of contemplated as access to High Street. Similar to the questions around the existing site of have we explored whether we could expand through real estate acquisitions, and the answer is yes. You know, some of the questions are what kind of conversations have been had with the property owners here. And so, you know, the owner of the global service station, who's also the lessee of Alltown Mobile, and Nora's on and can correct me if I get any of my terms wrong here, but they have planning board environmental impact and design review approval that went through a process to consolidate those sites. Although that approval is valid through April 27, that project is currently paused. It doesn't have an anticipated start date. And so at this time, based on discussions with property owners, the acquisition of an expanded easement through the service station property for access for FS1 would require closing the fuel dispensary portion of global service station. And as such, the owner is unwilling to voluntarily grant that access. Collaboration in the future to improve access to that town land is possible if that business plan proceeds, but for now, any acquisition of an easement would require a taking.
And the land that would be required to be taken to do the easement that you need, that would be the land that currently has the gas station tanks near it or in it, so that would have to be remediated.
I would defer to Nora, but I believe, yes, there are underground storage tanks in or near the potential easement.
Yes, they're very, very near. We would be looking for a 25-foot easement, and the tanks are probably within, 24 to 28 feet. It's a little difficult to tell. We can see where the concrete base is, but we can't see where the actual tanks are under the ground. So the assumption is that we would be having to disturb the tanks. And if we disturb the tanks, then the service station would have to lose its ability to pump gas. They would be able to continue as a service station, but not as a gas station. And Global's interest is in maintaining a gas station at that location.
That was really the primary concern on that site that we heard. We'll get into the comparative cost analysis and rough order of magnitude costing. Just want to, remind folks that the 2025 proposal, the previously proposed project, the total project cost was approximately $41.6 million. That differs from what was on the override because the town funded separately designer and OPM services, or at least portions thereof, prior to a debt exclusion. So for reference, the previous project would have cost the town about $41.6 million if it was approved in the prior appropriation. These rough order of magnitudes are just that. They're rough order of magnitudes based on these preliminary layouts and the costs associated with both construction and other project costs associated with the development at each of the three sites. These have been presented before, but they are presented in two ranges, a range that includes a low and a high value. The low value is what we are currently seeing on the low end of construction costs. The high value is what we are seeing on the high end of construction costs, escalated to the midpoint of construction for the project. These are not intended to establish a project budget and shouldn't be considered that way. They are really a comparative tool to help you make decisions between the three sites and not necessarily for overall project budget or scope. That said, there are a number of differences that I think have been discussed at length this morning and in previous discussions that differentiate the sites from each other. High Street ranges from just over $37 million to almost $44 million. Deerfield Ave ranges from about $34 million to just over $40 million. In lot 14-131, the lot behind Starbucks, ranges from about 38.8 million to just over 43
And just for, I know the committee's aware of this, but a common question from the public. While we're at rough order of magnitude here for comparative purposes and to give, a responsible idea of which of the site, how they compare to each other. The next phase of this, whichever site is picked, is for KBA not only to advance the design, but for that to reach a milestone of project scope and budget by late September, where we would have reconciled estimates of what we anticipate the total project cost to be. And that would then inform the warrant article language as well as the finance plan that the town administration and finance departments are responsible for putting forward, which does not necessitate that the entire project cost is debt excluded. We've talked publicly about that quite a lot. Regardless of what site is chosen, that is the case. Westwood, no community has access to all the funds they need to meet all the capital needs at once, but Westwood, through Select Board Finance Commission and the voters here, has managed its finances very prudently and conservatively. So whether it's free cash or other capital opportunities, we at Town Hall, and I know Select Board are very sensitive to the downstream tax impact. And so after today, whatever site's picked, KBA is going to keep doing their job through September on getting us to a responsible project scope and budget. And administration, Select Board and Finance and Warrant Commission will be working on what is the most responsible way to put a financing plan forward that can meet the needs of our taxpayers.
Important to understand on a concept level, ROM, our goal is really to put each of the options on an apples to apples comparison basis. There's a lot more variables beyond this, of course. So, I mean, you really have to think about some of the options are constrained by site that might drive some space inefficiencies. You might be able to do a 2 or 3 story on one site, but don't have that luxury on another site. That's another cost driver. Those are kind of incidental, and they'll be hashed out as we go further into the schematic design of the project once a preferred site is selected. But I think for this, we're just looking at those big ticket differentiators between each of the sites.
I always like to mention also, when you look at what the Mass School Building Authority, MSBA, does, when they look at the costing, and they have it, it's all on their website, you can go look. But currently, it's my understanding that public construction for public buildings is inflationary between 4% and roughly 6%. So time is of the essence.
That's correct.
I hate to do this.
He's gonna do it.
No, no, because we mentioned it in another meeting, so I want to make sure that we go through everything. There was another easement below the Gulf Station. It was only 10 feet. Or something. It was right away, and I asked for right away. And
so on, and you're correct. I mentioned that early on. There's about a 10-foot easement that exists currently today on the northern line of the optometrist building. It has a daycare in the back, optometrist in front. There is also an easement through the Starbucks parking lot to get up to that site, which is, I think, a 15-foot easement. To Nora's point, in order to do a real 2-lane drive road that it wouldn't be necessary to get to that site, we would likely need to take between 20 and 25 feet to the north of that property line. That gives us 10 feet plus about 20 to 25 feet. A drive lane is 24 feet. Once you get curbing and setbacks and screening and plantings, we think we need about 35 feet roughly to get up through and into there with the required grading and things like that in order to access that site.
I just want to make sure we hit it because we did talk about it, and that was that's basically the side of the building, Starbucks, all the way to the property edge.
On Starbucks, it is essentially the from the property edge into their parking lot by maybe 12 feet. It doesn't go all the way up to the building edge on the Starbucks site.
But the sidewalk and
but it is the property edge up, and you couldn't get likely one, it's their parking area, and two, you couldn't get a 25-foot drive lane through there. It would take up almost all of their parking and impede their business that way.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. So I'll touch on the the site selection matrix. So in front of you on the printout, you have a modified version of the steering committee's site selection matrix that the committee put together back in February when they narrowed the sites down from, I believe it was 8 options on the original matrix down to the 3 options that we studied in the feasibility study. So the old matrix had, we have 15 criteria that was carried over from the February matrix, this newer matrix, and we have added 6 throughout the process of the feasibility study that we felt would help clarify and distinguish the 3 sites. So 15 have been carried over almost word for word. Some of the verbiage has changed. The exact changes are all laid out in the memos, but they're mostly guided to help clarify language that was too vague in the original matrix, or to help differentiate one criterion from the other, to eliminate any overlap.
And so Seamus, we'll go through each of the matrices that has changed, and Connor, I'll allow you to comment on this.
So I think it's important for folks who are watching, this isn't kind of a whole cloth adjustment of how the FS1 matrix was put together. There are some additions and some refinements based on not just the design, the feasibility process, but also feedback from the committee, the select board, and the community to make sure that these things are really kind of dialed in. A couple of examples, if what was site constraints and access has been specified to site access without takings, right? Constraint on site. A site constraint is a challenge that is on the site. Site access is a constraint getting to the site. Those are distinct things that should be weighted distinctly. And that weight of access without taking has been increased from 3 to 5 because obviously there's a substantial impact of site access and acquisition that have on feasibility schedule and cost. Some things are more minor. Project would require building variances is listed as site constraint, would require building variances. Some language like property falls within strike zone, which I don't even know what that means, got updated to be more plain language, which falls within optimal fire department response time zone. So that when folks look at this, if they're we wanted this to be clear enough that if somebody's looking at it online without watching a multi-hour meeting, it's more explanatory. Things like lot restrictions, wetland, or other issues, we specified wetlands because other is obviously very vague and different people will have different interpretations. Impact on town fields was expanded to recreation and town fields because there's obviously recreational uses that are not strictly tied to a field. There was impact on rec/open space, which we adjusted to impact on open/undeveloped space because although sometimes folks use these terms interchangeably, a developed recreational asset like a field is a distinct thing from undeveloped land like a forest, right? So those are distinct property amenities and should be rated as such. Environmental concerns, again, that's extremely general. We clarified both through feasibility and through feedback from the public about PFAS and Tier 21E, which includes oil and hazardous materials. Cost and taxpayer alignment, one of the comments that came up earlier today, was whether to kind of separate those but really at the end summary level to make them carry more weight given the sensitivity of the feedback we've all received. And so they're still shown as together. They're kind of inextricably linked. The more expensive a project is, the more tax impact generally. But we've recommended increasing that weight from 2 to 5, which makes it a very substantial consideration. The committee is free to adopt that or discard that, but I think that would reflect that community feedback. And then we added specifically a community feedback criteria. It's turning into a number feedback is rather difficult, but obviously we've done a lot of public meetings, we've done surveys, we have feedback from folks, and this gives an opportunity for that to have its own metric in here. I think to reflect, it's not substituting an online survey for a comprehensive feasibility process, but to ensure that community perspectives are considered. And I know that they are, but again, to have the actual tool on its own without that kind of explanation of course, the select board cares about public input, of course, FS1 cares, to actually make it a criteria. And
Okay.
yep, and so here you are. That's a slightly neater version, but it's the same as what's in front of you.
So what we need to do as a committee is first, we need to approve the changes that Connor just referred to, and the changes in the existing matrix, the draft matrix. So we need to do that. Before we do that, I've asked Jody to bring up an issue that some of us have heard from others and talked about before we adopt the matrix.
I just thought that it was worth us as a committee having a conversation before we begin the process of approving the new matrix to evaluate the 3 sites and then going through the actual evaluation criteria of the 3 sites, to take a minute to look at everything that we have learned and all the new information we have since back in February we began this process, specifically as it relates to the Starbucks site, to see if that's still a site we want to continue and go through and evaluate. And the reason I think it's worth having a conversation about it is because as I look at all the work that the committee has done and all the work that has been done by the consultants and PMA, there are some things that I think are very significant that potentially change it. First and foremost is community feedback. We went into this process saying we wanted to hear what the community had to say, and that we were going to consider it and take it into consideration. We have 3 main pieces of community feedback when it comes to these 3 sites. Comments we get at our meetings, the people that showed up at the most recent community forum where they actually put the stickers on the little blow-ups, and the survey that we sent out. All 3 pieces of information, the community opposes this location substantially more than they do on the other 2. That's not to say that there's uniform as to where it should go. It's just saying, as you look at all 3 of those pieces of information, the highest opposition to a large factor is at Starbucks from the community.
Can I just explain about the survey you haven't seen, the community hasn't seen because it hasn't been posted. It was worked on, finalized yesterday. It will be posted after this meeting. But I have a summary of the survey that I'll just give you, which might help you. For 637 High Street, first of all, there were 657 people answering the survey, which is, I think, very good at this time of year. For 637, 339 thought that was the first choice, 226 thought it was the second, and 92 thought it was the third. So that's 339, 226. For 72 Deerfield, it was 284 thought it was the first, and 261 the second, 112 the third. But when you get to lot 14-131, it was 34 thought it was the first, 170 thought it was the second, and 453 thought it was the third. When you look at the posters, if you've seen them, it reflects the same thing. So from a community feedback, and really what we've heard for the last 7-8 months, that's sort of been the reflection point.
So that's one piece of information I think we should consider. The second is if we look at the feasibility of building the site there, as I understand the information that's been put to us, it's the only site that requires forceful taking of privately owned land. That's not necessarily at the other sites. And, one of the things that I learned today is we're not just talking about forceful taking of 15 feet to give us access to a road. We're talking about forceful taking of a privately owned land where the landowner is currently on record saying, we're not willing to talk to you or do anything with you in the time period that you need us to do it. But it would eliminate them running their business as they currently are running. It's not just taking an access road. They can't run a gas station there anymore. I think that's a significant cost, not only financial cost to the town, because they're going to have to pay for this, but also a cost to the community that the town does this. When we take that, there's going to be a cleanup cost that we're not necessarily going to have at the other locations for the oil tanks and the gas tanks that are there, and so that's that added cost. I think that's one of the things that, as I look at the rough order of magnitude, this is the most expensive site. And if you look at the flip side, the positives of building there, there's no positive to building on Starbucks that doesn't exist at one or both of the other two locations. So you're not gaining anything from using this site that you can't get at one or two of the other sites. And it's got some, I think, real both financial and community concerns that the other two sites have. And that's why I think it's worth us as a committee thinking about, do we want to continue with this on the matrix, or we just want to go forward with the other two and have a thoughtful evaluation and discussion about the two that are, at least from my looking at it, really in contention.
The other thing I would want to have you think about is this site has been in consideration from the very beginning. And we have talked about it from the very beginning. It's been part of everything that we have done. And so is it the right thing to do to take them off now, or complete the matrix and see where it lies? I would agree that the biggest obstacles are having to take the land, because we don't have being able to get there, and also the surveys. And we say we're listening to the community. I think that has an impact. So committee, before we vote on this, I think we need to decide, do we want to keep this site on the matrix?
I would say no. Just for the fact that it really doesn't have access. There's no alternate access. You could have maybe one in and one out. And that's not really good enough for a fire station. And it would be taken, it would add a tremendous amount of time to this process to what came. It was the only spot we had. I'd understand that, but we need to move this process along because they're in a tent.
Right, and I'll just add one quick thought. I think when I look at rough order of magnitude, I also look at risk, right? Like, it's the unknown, and I think as a town, no one has the appetite for the unknown, right? So what happens at that site from a soil perspective or a taking perspective, that will add to the time potentially. So all that to say, I am absolutely in favor of taking that off.
I think you're right, because if you look at the rough order of magnitude, the low end, this is the highest low end, because it's most difficult, and it does have the most unknown.
I know that the traffic study looked like they were pretty much equal, but from sort of an intangible perspective, I feel like that's a horrible traffic spot right there with the kids coming from the middle school.
And coming up Hartford Street, and then with there. I think this is a commercial taking, with not a residential taking,
Right.
which is going to be far more complicated. It's going to take a lot more time in court if ownership pushes back on it, and time.
And one resident pointed out, and I think they were right at the meeting, that it would be putting a dedicated signal light for the fire department really close to an existing light of an already busy intersection that coming out of Hartford onto 109, or completely redesigning that intersection to somehow accommodate both. So even getting the fire apparatus from the access road onto 109 is going to be.
I also agree with removing it. I mean, we've looked at this from the beginning, but as we went on, we have gotten more and more and more information about this, which we didn't have at the beginning. So we had to go through the process, and we've gotten to that process, and I don't think it's a viable location. So I'd be in favor of moving it.
Do you need a motion?
Well, I'm going to hear from Sarah.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, hi everybody. That's just fine. I have to echo what everybody else has already said, and I think that I'd also be in favor at this point of, after the exploration that we've done, removing this as an option, based on exactly what everybody else has already called out.
Thank you. And I would fall back and saying, if you don't have access, if the access isn't apparent, that takes it off to me as a possibility. And also, when I look at community feedback, and everything we've heard, I think it's appropriate to take it on.
Yeah, I mean, the survey clearly shows that nobody wants
I don't see a green sticker in there.
If you look at those stickers, it really
Yeah,
does show.
Exactly.
So I would like to make a motion before we look at the total matrix, but make a motion that lot 14-131, land behind Starbucks, we will take off the matrix as a consideration.
I second.
And I will poll the board. Any further discussion? Jody Petroselli,
Yes.
Ken Ayers,
Yes.
Peter Bean,
Yes.
Sarah Cantley,
Yes.
John Cummings,
Yes.
Harry Davis. I'm sorry, Harry's gone. Paul Delay,
Yes.
Nancy James.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, thank you. So would you make a motion for acceptance of the matrix?
I will. I move that Fire Station 1 Steering Committee adopt the proposed revisions to the site evaluation matrix, including modification to the criteria, weighting adjustments, and addition of a community feedback category as presented in our community committee packet that we have here, for the purpose of assisting the committee in its evaluation of the finalist sites and development of a site recommendation to the select board, with the addition that we will now be dropping lot 114-131 from the matrix.
Second.
Any discussion? Poll the board. Jody Petroselli,
Yes.
Ken Ayers.
Yes.
Peter Bean,
Yes.
Sarah Cantley,
Yes.
John Cummings.
Yes.
Paul Delay,
Yes.
Nancy James.
Yes.
And I, Ford Spalding, am a yes. Now we go to completing the matrix. So we're going to walk through the matrix. And what I'd like to do is, I know we filled out, you see some colors on the matrix form. We've completed though, but I think we should start from the beginning and take a look at each cell, all the options, and then reassign the matrix. It is going to be calculated as we go along, so we'll be able to keep up. So I will just start, and we're not going to take a vote on each question. Let's just see if we can come to a conclusion in a consensus way. We know the approximate size of the lot, so ability to accommodate frontline apparatus. How do we want to assign that? And if you look below, you have excellent, good, moderate, limited, proof, and you have color.
Could I
Yes,
just,
sir.
ask, if given the committee ranked the earlier ones, would it, and it's your call, perhaps the first question should just be, does anyone in the committee think that has changed? Is that, I'm
Perfect, thank you.
trying to be,
No, we appreciate that. So, are the rankings, any changes to those rankings?
I don't have any changes.
I don't have any changes.
I don't have any.
I don't
Okay.
have any changes.
Thank
You're
you.
talking about the weight, not the value. For the overall value.
So Ford had just suggested going basically through line by line, and you're at the first one ability to accommodate the frontline apparatus. And my suggestion was just, you already pre-populated that, so just across the board, is there any desire from the committee
For changes.
or any feedback from the select board?
That does the same thing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So ability to accommodate frontline apparatus, any changes? No?
No.
Ability to meet programmatic needs for training space?
Nope.
Ability to house a maintenance bay?
Nope.
Would require off-site temporary field fire operations? Site constraints?
I think the proposed plan for Deerfield doesn't require any variances, right?
The proposed plan for Deerfield is unlikely to require any variances for building itself. There is the potential that it might have a variance in the offset of parking from the dimensional table, though it's pretty unlikely we would be able to avoid. Without a full design, Jody, and fully developing those recreational areas, it's hard to give you a definitive answer, but it's likely that they wouldn't be required.
Do we want to keep the weighting where it is? I think the weighting where it is accommodates. Yeah. Okay.
Okay? Apparatus circulation,
Response.
Response time.
response time.
I think that's right.
I think it's
We
right.
could double check with Chief, he drives.
That's right.
Apparatus circulation.
Yep.
Okay. Time to complete, that's a brand new one.
Well, to be clear for the public, you did have this before, you just
Yeah,
didn't fill it out because you had it.
We didn't have enough information.
Right.
Just
Thank you,
for the
Phil.
sake of clarity.
I like having you here.
Great. I hope that doesn't change.
We do have to complete that one. We had home before. What would you like to do for 637 High Street?
So
The
for
demo adds to time,
for
right?
the board's understanding in the rough order of magnitude, I think the existing site, we estimate 22 to 24 months of construction duration. For the Deerfield site, we estimate say between 18 and 20 months for construction duration.
Aggressiveness.
Would we look at something like the 5 and a 4 or 3 and a 5?
Maybe 3 and
So-
4.
Yeah, so for existing, I would agree with a 3.
So that
Actually-
makes
And I'd
the number of
propose
numbers.
If we did it the existing, would time would have to be taken to remove the tent, set up the tent at the American Legion? Is that gonna add in a 2 more months?
I think that
That includes it?
22, yeah, is
Alright.
relocating, demolition, abatement, support of excavation, all the things that go into building the building, and then moving the fire department back in. So that's basically, the entire period.
3 and 4?
3 and a 4, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that gives us a 9 and a 12.
Lot restriction, wetlands.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I think the existing lot has minimal.
Yeah, there are wetlands on
Deerfield.
Deerfield Ave. There are wetlands on the Deerfield site. The existing lot doesn't really have any wetlands. I think there are some on adjacent lots that play, but don't really have a real impact on them.
So what do we, go? 5,
There
4?
were none.
We want to keep the weight of the wetlands as at 3 based on where we are now.
It's up to you.
Maybe a 2?
Yeah, I'm thinking it's a little high.
I'm okay if it goes to a 2.
And it's not really a significant factor in either of these sites. And it's not, if I understand what you're saying, the wetlands isn't a significant factor in the design of the fire station in either of these sites.
No, but
No, please go ahead.
I would say that, yeah, like the Deerfield site does have wetlands on it and adjacent to it.
Right.
But given the lot size, one, that's almost unavoidable here in Westwood on a lot of that size, and 2, it doesn't really factor into how that could be developed in a significant way, in our opinion. As far as the weighting, that is the committee's decision. I would note that you would have to reconsider your previous motion to accept if you wanted to change it.
I'm okay with changing the motion. Can we change it to a 1? Is everybody comfortable with a 1?
Can I just ask one quick question before we move forward? Are there any wetlands issues with the police station driveway? Is there something near that? But it looks like you're going the other way, though. It looks like you're going north.
Yeah, we're going north, so
No.
no, not in any meaningful way. Right? Like there's no meaningful restrictions there to that police station driveway. That wetlands have buffers, and if you're in those buffers, you may have to do a filing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's some adverse condition or restraint that's necessary based on.
I'd like to make a motion that we change it from a 3 to a 1 with the elimination of the.
Consider it first, right?
No, you can make a motion or amend a
To change the
motion.
weight.
Right, to change the
Right.
weight. So I'd like to make a motion that we amend and change the weight from a 3 to a 1 on the wetlands restriction.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Jody Petroselli,
Yes.
Ken Ayers,
Yes.
Peter Bean,
Yes.
Sarah Cantley,
Yes.
John Cummings,
Yes.
Paul Delay,
Yes.
Nancy James.
Yes.
And I'm Ford Spalding, and that's a yes. Okay, now we'll go back to what we're gonna sign it. And I think it's almost like a 1 and a,
But it's
So the first one, we don't want-
5
Which
is
37
I mean,
and
5, excuse me,
Yeah.
that's a 5.
maybe a 5 and a 4.
They're there, 5 and 3.
Yeah, 5 and a 3 might be more
Right.
appropriate.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Lot restriction topography.
Yeah.
It's good, isn't it?
Yep.
Potential traffic disruption for pedestrians.
Is Deerfield still an 8 now that we're not treating what I'm gonna call the current walkway as a primary access or entry exit? When we did that as an 8, it was because my memory is, because the thought process at the time is that would most likely be an access point, and that is
Right.
pedestrians currently would use it. We're now saying that that would only be a fallback or potential emergency access points if the other 2 existing access points are no longer viable. So given that, is it still a 4 as opposed to a 5?
I'd be with a 5.
I think it should be 5.
5 and 5.
Is that all right? Potential traffic disruption for vehicle.
It's the same.
Look like the same, right? Access existing utilities in place, water, electrical. I think that rating is pretty good. Impact on recreation and town fields.
Again, I think based on the design schematic, that the Deerfield number is worth looking at again, because when we initially looked at the property, we were thinking we would lose those fields. Now we're not losing them.
Better ones.
We're getting better fields, but maybe slightly smaller square footage, as I understand.
Well, I would think that should be a 4.
Yep.
So that becomes an 8.
Okay. Impact on open undeveloped space.
Well, it's noticeable lot.
I
don't.
So we was what, a third of an acre? Was a rearranging of.
That's 2.9.
Yeah, to be clear, you don't lose any undeveloped space. All the space basically on the lot is currently developed. This criteria really does affect the lot behind Starbucks, which you have removed more because they were kind of split apart, where recreation space was split apart from open space. I would consider it counter.
But if we were to put the
Agree.
fire station where you're saying,
Yeah.
the only thing that's back there is green space for the fields that the kids play on, and we're losing a certain amount of field space, and that's
Yeah,
how.
it's about a third to point.
Yeah, but-
acres
yeah.
in the current
A third of the
concept. I
But
guess I
the
would,
impact on undeveloped space for the Deerfield site is zero.
Right, because if
I
you're.
don't know,
I mean,
Jody, I don't know if
there's
it's
like
zero, but
tree-
it's
some trees on
near.
this externality of the site. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like we're splitting hairs, but it is a developed piece of property. But I don't think KBA or the town would feel comfortable saying that, you know, it's a perfect guarantee that if there's a tree on the edge of the site that it may not down.
So maybe we up that to a 4.
Yeah.
So that makes it an 8.
Okay. Okay, is that everything? Okay.
Now the new stuff.
The civic visibility presence, that's a brand new one.
Yeah, that was included because there was a lot of feedback from folks on the kind of, I guess, community or cultural importance of things where they are, right? And the visibility, particularly for the existing site, of it's prominent and unavoidable on the street. So I believe your motion was on the prior criteria, so now that you're in the new ones, it's real more open. If you think that should be weighted higher, that's your call.
I have an agree.
Well, let me ask, if the fire station goes on the Deerfield site, I mean, I think it's obviously if it stays where it is, it's fine because it's right there on 109. But if it goes on the Deerfield site, it won't have direct 109 access, but the properties in front of it that have direct 109 access are town properties, correct?
So again, not to split hairs, it depends on how you're explaining them. So if we're looking north-south to the west immediately, which would be if you're on the street in front of it, there's some residential.
There are a couple
The
residents.
police department is kind of up and to the right. There's
Where you go, the access, where you get to it.
yes, well,
But it's visibility impressive.
yes, it is right now. Take FS1 out of it. Right now, with voters having transferred that property to the town in May, there's basically a little like a necklace or almost a horseshoe of municipally owned from the library, the south, that goes through Deerfield and comes up through the police station, the American Legion, and Town Hall. So it certainly is. Deerfield is part of, you know, in my mind, part of a municipal quasi campus. I think visibility is more from the feedback from the public about the prominence driving by. That's ultimately up to all of you, how you.
No, I agree with that. You know, I think that's the drawback to this piece of property. It's not right on High Street, so you see it. So I think that's a huge visibility.
Well, as I understand from the chief's prior comments, is it's not just we like to see the pretty fire station right on 109. It's there's a need that's met by the community for having easy access and knowing directly where that fire station is. So because sometimes there's an emergency happening and they walk in. So knowing where to walk in is one of the main reasons for wanting to have this visibility. So I think the question that I was trying to ask is, you know, how is that affected if the properties on 109, there are properties on 109 that the town currently owns that could add signage to them to indicate the location, prominently indicate the location of the fire station for cars traveling up and down.
That's not real visibility in terms of seeing the building. I mean, I'm thinking it should be a five. I'm going the 5 and then a 4 or 3.
I agree.
I go 5. Right? It's low weight.
Side access without taking.
Yes, about the same.
5.
5 and 5.
Environmental concerns, potential contamination. At the High Street, there is potential known contamination already. We don't know of any at Deerfield, and I would think that would be very doubtful, but
Not now.
you don't know.
No, you're
2 and 3.
2 and 3, 2 and 4.
2 and 4. What are we gonna put down?
2 and 4.
2 and 4?
Cost taxpayer alignment.
Can you explain that?
They're pretty close.
Yes.
So, and again, you are free, this is a new criteria. If you want to break them apart, you can, but the tax impact of a debt exclusion is tied directly to the cost of the project, right? All other things equal. So, to me, I think it makes sense to have it together because the more the project costs, again, all things equal, the more the taxpayer impact. But one of the pieces of feedback, both last year, but also consistently throughout this new process is, I think there's a lot of things that are important, emergency response, et cetera, but folks want to see this as cost effective as possible.
Are you talking like maybe using free cash to lessen the burden? Is that the difference between cost and taxation? I
don't
so the
think
cost is
we're
the
there.
cost, but I
think
don't understand the tax part.
Well, so regardless of the additional tools that get leveraged to reduce the tax impact, those levers are going to get pulled no matter what site you pick.
Right.
Right. But there's finite money.
Like any IRA money coming back, that kind of.
Sure. So the simplest, and I think in my experience, a fair way to look at it is whichever project you think is a higher budget has a worse tax impact.
Right. So I mean, we are essentially just looking at the cost because we have nothing to do.
John, I look at total cost.
Yeah.
What is the total cost of the project?
All we're looking at, how it gets taxed out.
That's right. So that's
right, but the tax impact will no matter how creative the select board, myself, Stephanie, and FinCom get, the non-debt excluded cash we have available to us is finite.
Right.
So and the higher that project budget goes, it dilutes the proportional benefit of those other financing sources and pushes more onto the debt excluded.
Right, it's still an impact. It's almost like
Correct.
a shell game. You're just because you're using.
Well,
free.
I don't love shell game.
Keep in the background.
I think things are wrapped.
I guess
let me use that.
so
as a
if
shell.
we have $2 of cash, if a project is $10 at one site, then we got to borrow $8. If it's $12 at the other site, we still only have $2 cash, and you got to borrow 10.
Right.
Connor, let me ask this question. Does the town's ability to use other financing sources beyond a debt exclusion to pay for this change at all for either of the locations?
They're in the big picture, probably not. I just don't want to give a black and white yes, no, because depending on the site, there may be certain environmental grants that we can try to lean on for abatement that we just wouldn't need at Deerfield. That you may.
We're speculating on that. I mean, there's no distinction.
That's the point I'm
That's
trying to
right.
get. You're gonna do your best to
No matter
finance
what.
it,
Yes.
not with a debt exclusion,
Right.
regardless of
So
where
our
it is.
cost is the cost, but I
The
mean,
cost is the cost.
to that point, if we put in geothermal wells that could go at the Deerfield, but can't go at the fire station,
That's right. That's right.
there's a.
Yeah, I saw that yesterday. So
substantial
I think
financial.
it's total cost.
So that's why I think they
Right.
fund. It should be.
Because
Well-
we're paying for it one way or another.
Yes.
You know,
So I
if you
think we should just
use
look at
another
the cost,
source
is what you're
and
saying.
it comes out of the town, you're still paying for it. So I think you're looking at total costs, and I believe that the cost for the Deerfield property, the chances of a reduced cost over the existing is greater. And so therefore, I think that is potentially probably the lower cost.
Right, all right, so
And we're showing that already as a lower cost. So
could you put geothermal wells at the Deerfield?
Based on our current understanding, the Deerfield site is not eligible for geothermal because of the PFAS contamination. Current Mass DEP
I'm sorry,
the existing site. I apologize.
correct.
It's only morning. Yeah, the existing site, because of the PFAS contamination, is currently under Mass DEP regulations not eligible to have geothermal at it. Based on our current understanding of the Deerfield site, and just given that it's a bit bigger in lot size, there is a higher propensity to be able to use geothermal at that site.
Are we considering the use of geothermal heat a cost expense or savings?
Savings.
Well, so.
Yeah.
Depends on your time
And-
frame.
Depends timing.
So, have done geothermal in projects before. And one of the things that can be confusing and sometimes frustrating to taxpayers is that when you're doing something with geothermal, and the reason that's become more popular is not only because of sensitivity to climate change and a more efficient energy use than doing electric-based or fossil fuel, there is still, even after the big beautiful bill, refundable Inflation Reduction Act tax credits that can go to municipalities and schools for defraying significant parts of the cost, right, of the upfront acquisition that can then reduce the lifetime cost return, so that you, with some projects, end up out of the gate not being in the red on the capital acquisition, and over time you are more energy efficient, which saves money. However, when you're going to voters at town meeting seeking a project budget amount, you can't net that out, right? So let's say it's a $40 million project and you think you're going to get a $2 to $3 million IRA refundable tax credit. You can't go to voters and say, well, you can explain to voters that it will ultimately cost 37, but we have to ask you for 40. So I just want to, for the sake of transparency, be very clear about that.
You use the word refundable.
Yes, but
That's
again,
exactly.
I think.
How did that work with,
I know, $5 million.
No, what was the cost of putting in geothermal and have we recouped it yet?
Yes.
When did
So
we?
they we were able to get the COVID money because of the geothermal wells and the HVAC system.
Okay.
That was a couple $1 million that we would not have gotten. We also got was it $4.5 million
I wasn't here.
in IRA?
Yep.
And then because we did the solar panels on top, it was another $500,000.
And
So by
rebates or
making-
refunds or credits that you're talking about.
Right, and I checked into it at the fire station where it currently is. We couldn't put those in because of the storm drain,
Right.
500-year storm thing. But we couldn't put geothermal wells in. But if we could put them in here, that changes me at least one number from like a 3 to a 4. If it's just potential, right? We're just looking at potential. We're not coming up with a design right now.
Okay.
But that's why I'm asking that one particular question.
So
That's
if I
fine.
understand, just to keep it on the macro level, what we're saying is on a conceptual level.
Right.
If we were to put geothermal heat at Deerfield, if that site's chosen because it's more available, we believe there's a
Potential.
reasonable likelihood that we will be able to recoup the costs, the construction costs of putting in the geothermal heat within the first 3 years of the building.
So I'm going to just say no. It would be
That's why-
irresponsible of
Yeah.
us to guarantee
It's
that.
the
So-
potential for IRA tax refund money.
Yeah, right, it's
And
potential.
then your long-term costs over 30 years is considerably less.
Yeah.
You're using less electricity, which is becoming more and more expensive.
Yes, but again, it's legislation at the
Right.
federal level can change, the standards can change, right? So I think all of that, so you're getting from mechanical, electrical, plumbing, all that stuff,
Yeah,
that's
got
gonna
it.
be baked into schematic design, no matter what site gets picked. Part of it's going to be looking at what are the environmental constraints on site that may prohibit your use of certain systems. But also you're going to be looking at what is the availability and the likelihood of the continued availability, because it also, the timing of those is driven by construction and things of that nature. So there would be a kind of lot of cost benefit analysis going on between KDA and the finance department. I do love these items. I correct me if I'm wrong. I think that we're looking at for this item, rough order of magnitude cost, and how does this committee think that fits into the expectations that you have heard from the public on cost and the tax impact?
That's what I really want to focus on, and
I
I
would
think
say-
when you look at the design factors, it's that Deerfield is going to be I don't like to use the word easier, but yeah, maybe a simpler design. I don't know how to do it. A less difficult design than the one at on High Street. So I would, just throwing out a number, I would say it's a 3 and a 4,
Yeah,
or somewhere in
yeah,
there.
So High Street's a 3, Deerfield's a 4.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this committee is comfortable with increased weight on cost to and tax impact based
Yeah.
on feedback.
Yep.
Yes.
I just didn't want it to go one side.
And cost was a factor in the survey, you know, and people
Yeah.
were saying cost, and it certainly was a factor in the last effort.
And they were okay with the size.
Layout, efficiency, and size. Again, I think we know that 637 High Street is a 3-story building on a very 1.1 acre of land, and Deerfield's on 7.5 acres of land, and it allows for a 1-2-story complex of building. So I would say that's a
3-4.
What'd you say?
2-4 or 3-4?
2-4.
I'd agree with it. I'd say a 2, 2
Yeah.
4.
Yeah, 2 and a 4.
Everybody agrees?
Yes.
Community feedback. They were very close. The existing site received a little bit higher. They were 339 as compared to 284 as the first price. They're marginally close. You know, I would probably say that it should be a 4 and a 5. Something like, excuse me, a 5 and a 4, or 4 and a 3. Because I'm giving the benefit of doubt to what we've heard of the community out there. A lot of people have said it in our community forums that they prefer the existing site. And I think we have to acknowledge that in our rating.
I agree.
If you combine the first and the second choices, it's pretty close.
It is close, but it's still, you know, the survey shows
Yep.
that
No, and I do
people
wanna-
really favor High Street marginally. And when you look at the boards they put up with those, it's probably more than that. And if you listen to the community that's out there, I've heard more people say, oh, keep it where it is, than move it. So
I do want to point out that we are listening to the community because we dropped off the lot behind, you know, from this survey, the lot behind the Starbucks 14.
yeah, I think we have to listen. So I'm going to say it's, I don't know, I'm a 4 and a 3 or a 4.
I guess before we decide, my only feedback on that one is I don't want to lean too much into a survey because there are more many registered voters. We have a survey of 600 and say 50 people and stickers, right, and stickers on a board.
100,
All right.
1,000 voters.
Can we do half number?
I'm just saying let's not.
Well, that makes it probably more difficult for Seamus, but I would say, what do you want to pick? 4 and a 3 or a 3 and a 2 or 5 and a 4 or 4 and a 4?
I'll go 4 and 3.
I like that.
I'd agree with 4.
I like that.
Okay. That completes the matrix. So the next step is for us to make a decision.
Well,
Excuse me,
the
Connor.
order of events specifically for the select board as well to weigh in.
Oh, on
This questions.
What are the final numbers?
179, 229. Is that right? 226?
226.
What is it again?
179 and 226.
Do we need to do a new motion at this point in time, now that we've gone through the matrix, but we made that change from our previous motion to adopt the current chart with the current values as our evaluation?
You could, but because it's this is how folks know this is organic because it's clunky and awkward. When you have a joint meeting,
They can do it.
The select board is here specifically because there has been, some folks who have asked about who is the final say on the site, right? The select board is a private owner. So I think, as we laid out here, before you finalize this is really the board's time to ask all of you questions, understand your thinking, to give their own perspectives or concerns, ideas before it's finalized.
All right,
Great.
I'm good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for that conversation, for the presentation. It's one thing to watch your meetings, and it's another thing to be here at the table with you all. I appreciate the really constructive dialogue we've had on all of these things. One thing I wanted to underscore is with respect to fields at Deerfield. I actually had a conversation yesterday with the president of Westwood Youth Softball. Interestingly, I wanted to mention to you, his concern was not so much the play space to the outfield, but among the bases, 60 feet between the bases. And I assume that's in there.
Yeah, so the diagrams as proposed are regulation softball field size.
Okay, great. That was the concern, because we've got some littles on some of those fields who are not going to get to 230 feet in the outfield. So the bases are really more important. But I think the point is, if we are focused on Deerfield, that we really want to, and this appears to be where your committee is moving, that we really want to engage the community on that discussion in terms of what we want and what's going to be helpful. So I don't have any further questions based on what's been done here. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues to see if you have questions or comments.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Mary. I have a couple comments on the Deerfield site. Before I do, I think your discussion about visibility from the road for people passing by is a huge issue, which is what's very nice about the current site. But looking at the entire picture and the work you did on the matrix is helpful. But let me just add a couple of comments. First of all, as far as dead-ending Deerfield Ave, I think we ought to keep the options open on that. Connor, you and I talked about, let's get a baseline traffic numbers at some point in the future so that we're not speculating 2 years down the road. Well, do we need this or do we not need it? Let's have some hard fast numbers. Kind of, Marianne, like we were involved with the East Street thing. It's nice to have that baseline value. So I would certainly push for that. As far as the fields go, the thing I do like about the Deerfield is you do have some room for expansion, which you don't have at the 637 High Street. It's 25 pounds potatoes in a 5-pound gunny sack, but it's pretty tight there. And as far as regulation fields, I personally don't get caught up on the fact of a regulation field. This is not the high school. It's not a college. This is a neighborhood field. I do have some reservations about the 235 feet down the line, because I have seen Ken play on some softball fields behind the fire station. I'm not sure 235 feet is enough, but we'll find out about that later. As far as the field, boy, you did some nice work on that. And I think what I want to say is using the dry wells, it's a very noble gesture, but it's pretty ineffective to put water back in the ground that's already 100% saturated. And I think that, and Greg, you said this, that if you graded that field, put a nice crown on it to get your drainage going in the right direction, it would be a huge step. But what I didn't hear mentioned, I'd like to mention, and I may be wrong, the environmental folks may be able to help out more with this, but if you did improve the fields at that location, the water management, by installing a stormwater system rather than just dry wells, and you put a swale at the at the north end of that lot, proximal to the wetlands, and you had that water draining off the field rather than just going into the ground into a swale with some pre-treatment devices around the field, that water could actually go to the wetlands and actually improve the situation for the wetlands. So it can be a win-win for the wetlands. It can be a win-win for the field, which that's important. I think that's important. But most of all, I agree that I like the Deerfield site, all the facts that have been presented. Now it's your turn.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this has been a great process, and I don't think that my comments would change the outcome based on the matrix, which I think is a very good way to do this. But the biggest concern I have with the Deerfield site is the water. And it's not just the site, it's the neighbors. I've heard from a lot of neighbors who have flooding in their backyards. And I think that if the town is going to do this, I think we need to commit to really getting to the bottom of that and helping with that problem, because they've said that it's gotten much worse since the police station was built. And I think those are our neighbors. So I think it's not just, and in my opinion, might be an unpopular take, I don't know that fields belong there. Like, I'm not sure that we can't help make that better by making that more of a park with trees. I don't know all the science behind it, but maybe the fields are replicated elsewhere, such as perhaps the Starbucks site. Like, I would like the committee and the designers to look at whether fields belong there, if it's truly that wet all the time, and whether there's a way that we can improve the water issues in that whole area by using that green space as still as green space, but maybe some other solution be trying to make fields that will be dry there. My bigger concern with respect to that green space is the impact of flooding on the neighbors. So I would like the town to commit to work with the neighbors to improve that, if that's the way this is going to go. I share Joe's concern. I actually think the lack of visibility on High Street is actually kind of a big issue. This has come up a lot, but I do also think you could put a big sign on 109 that says it's the, where the fire station is. So I don't think that changes. I don't think that makes it changes the choice, but I think that was important. I just want to reiterate that I heard that from a lot of people. And I guess the last thing which I thought was interesting in terms of what I've heard from previous public projects is people feel that they have been overbuilt. And whether or not that's true or not, I don't know, but I think that I really want to make sure we don't overbuild this building, which means that it has to be put in a place that can accommodate unknown future needs, which to me just can't happen on the current site. I just don't think that's a good investment of our town funds. And I think we can't possibly know what's going to be needed in 30 years, but that site is kind of already too small. So on the day it's built, it will not be able to accommodate any future changes, which if those needs come up, then we're doing a new fire station someplace else, or I don't know what we would do. So for me, and it wasn't on this matrix, but the ability to avoid to not try to anticipate every need that we would have in the next 30 years, but build in a location where there would be an ability to accommodate that in the future. I think that was actually a really important factor for me when I was looking at these sites. So I support the decision. That's where the committee is going to go. I do think on balance, I wasn't initially in favor of going back to the drawing board, but I think that organically, as you have moved through this process, it has, the Deerfield site has risen to the top in terms of the best place for the community to locate the building.
Thank you, Erin. I actually do have a couple quick questions, not to belabor this. With respect to the secondary egress from Deerfield on Glen Road, I know that it's a little tough right now, but do you think, Greg, some thought perhaps could be given to expanding the curb cut there to make that a better place to swing out?
Unlike Westwood Glen.
Yeah,
So the
to make
difficulty.
the left-hand.
Yeah, so the difficulty there, Chief, is from the Deerfield extension left onto Westwood Glen is a little bit tight. Like that is the way that the apparatus would come back to that site. Which again, if you're not in an emergency response, they're relatively low traffic roads, making those turns are not difficult. But in a response scenario, that's when we would think of doing stuff like that. We have not surveyed that area, though it is adjacent to existing town properties. My assumption is we have at least access to some surveys in that area, and we could certainly look at the road condition there. I will just, prefer that by saying parking is tight on that site between town hall and the police department, and anything that would impact the existing parking would be very difficult for town hall. I've been there a couple times where those lots are fairly full. I'm sure all of you have as well. So we would, be hesitant to do that if it impacted that ability to park at town hall.
Mhm. I would just suggest that if this is the selected site, that we just look really carefully
Certainly.
and thoughtfully at making sure they can get out there as easily and as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and Marianne, I would just say that in part of the traffic analysis that we would do in that area for preemption lights, we would also look at that existing intersection to make sure that not only did that intersection have like opticons, which do the preemption, for fire apparatus throughout town, but that the distance and the turning radiuses allow for that unit on that intersection light pick up the vehicles as they turn onto Westwood Glen, and we would basically follow those turning movements from the station all the way out onto High Street to make sure that the department is set up for the highest level of success we can get by the geometry.
Thank you. That is helpful. And then the second question is, I'm sure we've all been out to the site and have looked at where the building on Deerfield is proposed to be situated. Are you able to say, Greg, when you go down Deerfield, which house or houses would even have visibility of the fire station?
In a high level way, Marianne, I think we can give some relatively broad feedback, given that we haven't designed the building fully and that there's still a lot of work to be done. Certainly, if you are on the properties that are owned by the church, those properties, from portions of them, would be able to likely see portions of the building. The first residential property on the northernmost side of Deerfield Ave is likely to be able to see some portions of the building. Although, if you recall the kind of updated version where we rotated the building, the existing school site, as you go to the east toward Deerfield Ave, has a fair amount of green space there, lawn space, where we're able to add screening further away from the building. So the closer to those residential properties we get the screening, the more of the building we block. And we can layer it because we do have some space there to kind of cut down on those those sight lines and those views. You're likely seeing a portion of the side of the building and a little bit of the front of the building, which is not necessarily a bad thing in our view. And it's likely that is only going to be a 2-story building with an average height. We're hoping under I think that 35 feet is the average height restriction there. So it won't be a very tall building. It'll be scale wise proportional to the school. It'll be a bit taller on the 2-story portion, but given that school has a pitched roof, it'll be scaled to the size there.
Can you describe screening for those that don't?
Sure. So I know plantings, essentially a mix of deciduous and evergreen trees. Different ways we can do that with some grading and things like that to make it a composed scenario where we're able to layer in different pieces of vegetation to help screen the building. Certainly, as we get through design, screening of particular mechanical units as you had on the previous design at High Street might become relevant or perhaps not, but that's how we would go about that first. If we can start closest to those residential properties and start building those kind of layers of screening, that's the most effective. And at Deerfield, we do have the ability to do that.
It's important again to reiterate, like we're at concept level, and one of the things, and Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, that KBA and the traffic component we need to do is you want to make sure screening is not so thick you can't see. Right.
Yeah.
But
Sorry.
I'll try to be funny, but it just I don't want somebody watching to say, oh, they're just going to have a wall of green and never see the fire station, and that's good. It has to balance traffic and safety as
I
well.
just wanted people to understand what the word.
No, that's a very good question.
I just have a couple more quick comments and then I'll turn it back to you, Ford. I agree with what's been said about the opportunity for growth at Deerfield, what that site allows. I agree that we do need to be concerned about water on the site. And from what I have understood from this discussion and others, that at Deerfield, we anticipate will be significantly improved by the work that's going to be done in terms of stormwater management, where there's essentially none or very little at this point. I disagree that we should be looking to take away field space, which is extremely important in the absence of something that is completely delineated. We know that these are girls' fields for softball, and they are extremely important in town. And I look forward to the continued discussion with our youth sports leaders to shape that if this is the selected site. So with that, I will turn it back to you.
To move this along, because I've asked each of the committee members to please, before we vote, tell us your thoughts about the sites and some of the pros about whatever site you think is good, and then we'll move to a vote. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. First, I'd like to thank fellow committee members for all your work and stuff on this process for the last 9 months. In looking at the two sites we have remaining, my choice would be Deerfield. I think from a construction standpoint, it's an easier site to construct a 2-story building and not a 3-story building that would be on High Street. We do have, from an operational standpoint for the fire department, 2 ways in and out of the bays, which would help fire department get in and out. Just to me, an easier site to construct something in a shorter construction time, and the need that we need to get the fire department up and running into a updated space.
Thank you.
I go next. So, fire station currently is on 109, and that can't be underestimated. I think people feel a sense of relief or a sense of, positive sense when they drive by their fire station and say, oh, there they are. I know exactly what they are. You're driving down 109, you're having a baby, you're having a heart attack, you can pop right in, make sure everything's okay. Well, you can be having a baby, you can be having a heart attack, and they can check them both out and bring by ambulance. I do think that if we kept it at the same site, we're asking the town to vote on essentially the same thing. And they've already said no twice. There is no room for expansion on that site. Whereas at the Deerfield, which was not available the last time we put this all together, I think that you're able to construct a better fire station because you'll have egress on both sides of the buildings, right? And there'll be room for expansion if necessary. I think that the upgrade to the fields, as a coach who had kids run on those fields, they're terrible fields. And they did a great job back in the 70s when they put them in, but basically they just filled it in with bobcats with whatever they had. There was no engineering, there was no stormwater, there was nothing the fields aren't pitched, they're not drained, whereas a new field would be beneficial not just to the neighborhood, but the whole community at large, right? To at least two nice fields, whether it's a multi-field and a softball field or two softball fields or however they configure it. So I'm all about the dirt field.
Nancy.
So I will echo everyone's thoughts because I do think it's important to just say that I do think visibility on High Street is important. That being said, functionality is critically important, and I mentioned risk earlier. I can't get comfortable with the possibility of going down to 4 bays. That directly impacts the operations of the fire department. So that's one. My other thought to support Deerfield is construction timing. And then my third thought is flexibility. It's such limited space that I don't know that the fire department would have everything that they need from a training perspective, space in the back. And then finally, temp ops, I think would be very difficult. We're not talking about moving an office building where you throw your things in a box and you just go to another site. I mean, I'm not an expert. I look to the chief for that. But to move and spend that much time in temporary quarters, I think is extremely disruptive. So for those reasons, I support Deerfield as well.
I want to go to Sarah next.
Hi, everybody. Yes, I'm sorry I can't be there in person with you all. But I would like to agree with what many of the other committee members have said. I think overall the functionality of the size, the topography, and the access to the Deerfield site really kind of puts it ahead of what we're able to do at High Street. I also agree construction timing is a factor here. I mean, the sooner we get a new fire station out, the better we're going to be. And lastly, I think that the prioritization of maintaining both the Deerfield School building for future use and the green field and space is also very important. So I'm happy to see that that was taken into consideration. I actually am a parent of 2 daughters who play youth softball, so I spend a lot of time over at the Deerfield field. So any improvement to those obviously would be very welcome. So I also support Deerfield as a site for the new FS1.
Thank you. Peter.
The only challenge to the Deerfield site is the visibility. I think that can be mitigated with signage. Everything else, it checks the box, and the ability to start to think about master planning that area as well, incorporating the fire station. Obviously, it's the true plan.
And I'll build on what Peter was saying. I like the fact that we're sort of aligning this a little bit closer to where the police station and the town hall is. It just overall sends a nice message. We've asked a lot of the fire department over the last few years, and I think from a disruption and morale point, this is really an important message that we're sending to them. Instead of making them have to move in and out a couple of times, the disruption would be a lot less if we go with the Deerfield site instead of trying to get a temporary setup for them. The cost obviously is there. The flexibility as things go on, like this, we can't anticipate everything. And with Deerfield, if we need to make adjustments, we're going to have the latitude with that we might not have had in some other situations. I do like the fact that they're going to improve the water and drainage. Pete and I went to Deerfield Elementary School. It has probably so we go way back with that field, and whatever they can do to improve that would be awesome. And I am concerned that we have taken the community sentiment into account here, and I think that we've weighed that. I was thinking, maybe we could have waited a little bit more, but even all things being equal, it still would have come out the same. As far as the scoring goes, it's really important that we get everybody rowing in the right direction here. And I think that given the potential here and in the way to address sort of just the overall morale that everybody has really the police department, the fire department's really stepped forward. We owe this to them to try to make this as disruptive least disruptive as possible. So I really do think that the Deerfield is Top choice.
Thank you, Paul. Jody?
I vote for Deerfield. All the reasons we talked about, I don't think we need to go back into them. For me, if you're going to look at X factors, it would be, a lot of what Nancy was talking about. It is the unknown. I think you guys did a great job of designing a potential schematic firehouse at the current location that meets the needs. There's a lot of unknowns in that. And I think the risk of that location, if one thing goes wrong or one thing changes, you don't have the ability to pivot there to still give the fire department what they need. And you do at Deerfield. So just the ability to pivot, the ability to adjust the design as new things come up to still meet the community needs and meet the fire department needs are much stronger at that location. And, as Peter said, it checks all the other boxes.
Deerfield is my preferred site. Topography is flat. Potentially, it allows for a building that could be expanded in the future if required or necessary by another generation. Response times, it really is about the same, a little more, but about the same as the current site, so it meets response times. There's several access points to High Street. It's not just one, there's several access to High Streets. It's very important to me. Fire department can stay right where they are during construction. Again, they don't have to move. It connects our public service departments in an adjacent locations, which I may have be good. It really doesn't adversely change the traffic situation that we currently have. Potentially, I believe it could be less expensive. It allows for the playing fields and walking paths to remain, and I think that's an asset, as has been explained. To me, the only negative is when I drive by and see a fire station in a town, I sort of smile and I'm glad it's there. I'm not going to be able to do that. Yes, signs work, but that is to me negative. So that's where I am. I think what we really need to do is go to a vote.
Need a motion?
Need a motion. Of course I do.
I move that the Fire Station 1 Steering Committee recommend the Deerfield site as the preferred location for the future Fire Station 1 and transmit that recommendation together with the committee's findings, evaluations, materials, and supporting rationale to the Select Board for their consideration and final action.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I'll poll the board. Jody Petroselli.
Yes.
Ken Ayers.
Yes.
Peter Bean.
Yes.
Sarah Cantley.
Yes.
Sean Cummings.
Yes.
Paul DeLay.
Yes.
Nancy James and I, Ford Spalding, vote yes. I'm now going to turn the meeting over to chair of the board of the select board. But I want to say we will come back to approve minutes, which we have to do, and then we will adjourn after you.
Thank you very much.
Chief.
I just want to say thank you. You guys spent an enormous amount of time on this, and it's very much appreciated. When you talked about the morale, the guys were not looking forward to going into trailers for 3 years. So the decision's great, and I really want to know that the whole department appreciates this. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank them, because we appreciate what they've been through. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chief, for being such an integral part of this process. I very much doubt that when you first met as a committee that you thought you would be unanimously deciding on a site months later. And that's what you have done. And this matrix really affirms what you have decided today. It affirms for the town the due diligence that you have done exhaustively. I appreciated hearing from PMA and KBA just to put this process in context, that you have spent so much more time and deliberation at this stage of the process choosing a site than is typically seen. So again, truly appreciate that. Also, I just wanted to point out that in the community survey, the priority that was most important to community members was emergency response and operational effectiveness. And that's what you all have focused on as well, and that's what we're focused on. So I appreciate that. Let me just ask my colleagues before we have a motion. You have made your recommendation to us. We have been, as we said, part of this process since last fall. And now it's up to us to make a decision on this so that we can move forward to a special town meeting and a fulsome design of the selected site. So let me just open this up to my colleagues, whether you'd like to have some further discussion before we decide on a motion.
I have three things. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well said, Joe.
I just have just a couple closing thoughts. I thank you also. I think this is a very good result. I think this is the best site, and I appreciate all the work you put into it, and I support your process and the outcome. I know that the taxpayers don't really support taking these projects forward on a piecemeal approach. I know that long-range financial planning is looking at this. I just ask that now that a site is being selected, that we maybe consider what possible uses of the other sites might supplement and make this project better. And by that, I mean, like, my point about the fields is not that they shouldn't be copied or protected or saved, is that they don't necessarily need to go at Deerfield. So my point is, I don't want to ask Deerfield to do too much, that site. If we can renovate the existing FS1 to move some functions there, that might be cheaper and could make the new FS1 smaller. So I just ask, I don't want to broaden the scope, but we have all the expertise and people have looked at these sites. To the extent that we can solve for what we need at FS1 by using parts of the other sites, I just would ask that we all, especially the design team, look at that. For example, if any fire station functions can be kept at the old site, or if we can consolidate DPW or police or fire functions at the site that's on High Street, I think that would be a great use of what's there. It's obviously, it's the end of its useful life as a fire station, but it might still be useful as a garage or for dispatch. Or offices or something like that. But I just ask that you consider that when you're doing the programmatic needs for the new building at Deerfield, that you consider whether any of the fields or the functions could be parsed out to the other sites.
So I actually have a comment on that. I'll just sort of speak as from a long range perspective. So we're very much in the process of taking a look at the Doran Whittier studies that were done. So both the schools and municipal, and really taking that and coming up with an approach to bring to the community, right, to look and do that. But I think I don't know that I'd want to combine that right now. Not to say that we would. I think we have to do this in increments and just be very thoughtful and methodical. And I just don't know if it would be problematic
Well, I mean,
to do that now.
They're unfolding in kind of 10, right? And for anyone watching, you are on board,
yes,
right? So we do have our own project team on that who is following this one very closely, right? Because there are times when folks feel if you have one design firm doing both your projects today and telling you what you need tomorrow, there's nothing actually necessarily wrong with that. But sometimes people feel like, oh, so they're already kind of calling the shots for their next job. Doing a different team, not that, Greg, you're wonderful, but there's a different team working with the long range financial planning committee with funding that the select board authorized for this exact purpose there. And that we know and appreciate that the public is sensitive to, are we thinking about downstream impacts and opportunities as we go through this, and are we working with the schools, which we are, right? So that will be happening at the same time it has started with long range. They'll be meeting again at the end of August and kind of keeping that work so that folks understand, and we already know, right? FS1 is coming in the fall. Thurston, both through the school committee and through the select board, I believe unanimously, submitted the statement of interest to the state MSBA to get that started. A formal process would be in line for the state grant funding that would be necessary to address Thurston Middle School, right? Sometimes you hear from folks, they feel these things are in contest or they're mutually exclusive. And, you know, we have a failing fire station that needs to be addressed. We have a middle school that's in really rough shape that needs to be addressed too. And we also know, as you said, with public works, there's a variety of needs. And I think as we go through this process in the fall, not just for FS1 and how we're thinking about financing, but what the long range committee is doing and working with the select board and the finance committee, I think we're going to start to see some different strategies with funding capital in the long term be recommended and pulled together that I think the board will receive well, and I think the community will.
And I'm not saying I'm not trying to broaden the scope, and I don't know that I don't think the community has the appetite to broaden the scope. But I want there to be, I think people will feel better when it comes time to the vote on this project, to know that what the plans are. There's some tentative plans for what we could use those other sites for. And again, just a plan, and a rough cost, so that people just know that it's been kind of looked at as big picture.
So with that, I will entertain a motion that the select board select Deerfield as the site for the FS1 project. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let me do a roll call, just be on the safe side.
Keep Pat happy.
Yeah, Pat happy, exactly. Joe?
Aye.
Aaron? Aye. And I vote aye as well. We have a project.
All right.
I do, we just have some next steps to talk about. Is there anyone here from Deerfield? Deerfield? I think she just. Okay. So no one here is present. There might be folks online. But I just want to say to the abutters, the folks in Deerfield, we've obviously been meeting with you over these last few months, and that is going to continue now that we move into this next step of the process. We care about the construction, obviously, of FS1, and we care about your neighborhood, and we hope very much that as part of this project, we're actually going to improve your neighborhood. And we've talked about some of the expected improvements, and you are very much going to be an important part of that conversation. So we just want you to know that. So you as a committee have been so important, as we have discussed: public engagement, collaboration, providing significant value to the community, helping to build a strong foundation for this project, and I dare say to our democratic process in Westwood, based on the work that you have done. And we again want to formally acknowledge the work that you have done and the tremendous public service that you have provided. And much like at work, when you do a great job, you get more work. We also want to acknowledge that your role as a committee has really evolved through this process, and through all of the public meetings that you've done, community forums. You've become a very important resource for residents and a valuable bridge between the select board, the project team, and the community. So we've given some thought to this, and as the project now moves forward into this next phase, leading up to what will be a special town meeting in probably late October and the November 3rd ballot, this need for clear communication, engagement, community dialogue is going to be critical. And while we recognize that some of you may feel that your service has concluded with the delivery of this big deliverable today, we want to respectfully request that you consider staying on as a committee through the election, November 3rd, as a FS1 Advisory and Community Engagement Committee in a new role focused on public education, community engagement, project communication, and advisory support through November 3rd. And I just want to say that we respect any of you who have decided this is all that I can give right now. And if that is the case, we absolutely thank you and respect that. But we would love it if you would consider the request of staying on. You've done tremendous work. You have so much momentum behind you. And so we humbly make that request for your consideration.
I can't answer for the individuals. They'll have to answer for themselves, but I'm happy to continue. And does everybody like to continue?
I'm in.
Any no's?
Financial reward is the same as the old committee.
Well,
I will double it.
you laugh. I was gonna ask for a bonus.
You got me.
Sarah, you okay?
Yes, I'm in.
And I have had a conversation with Harry. He's out of the country a couple of days ago. When he told me he couldn't be here, and I told him what we were doing. We're here. We're your army.
Excellent.
That is absolutely fantastic. Thank you all so much. Maybe we can just do a motion just to formalize. Nancy,
a very quick comment. Something that I really enjoyed as part of this, and I think it just feels different, is that it's been great to just bring people together, like as a community, and hear people's concerns. And I beg for anyone who's either here or listening to the recording to please continue to use that FS1 website, or the FS1 website and the email address. Direct your questions to us. There's some real danger in not doing that, I think, as a community. So I just want us to keep moving forward. So that's my little wager for staying on, or my request for staying on.
I also just want to add, I think one thing the committee has done very well, that is really what I want to focus on going forward, is that it's been a two-way street. It's not just you guys going out to the community and telling people about what we're doing, and what, the project and where it is, and the schemes, and the plans. You've also listened to what people have, the responses, and I have seen that happening in real time, and then changes have been made to the project in response to that. So I think it's been a very important two-way street. It's not a one-way street where we're just out here presenting to you this project to sell it to you. It's more to engage in a dialogue that goes both ways, and hoping that if we continue that through the process in the fall, by the time we get to the votes, community input will be considered and will shape the project, so that by the time we get to the finish line, people feel good about where we are and how we got there, and feel good about supporting the end product. So instead of just delivering it to that at the end, as a fait accompli. So I think it's a really valuable part of this process. So thank you.
Yeah, Aaron, what we do is we communicate and educate.
Mm-hmm.
Communicate is a two-way street, and educate is give people the facts and let them make up their minds.
That's right. Yeah. I will accept a motion to transition the FS1 Steering Committee to the FS1 Advisory and Community Engagement Committee. So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Joe.
Aye.
Aaron. Aye. And I vote aye as well. I also just wanted to mention, then I will give it back to you, Mr. Chair. I'd also like to think about setting up a recreation and athletic programming subcommittee, so that we can really start to drill down on this issue of, what do we need in terms of fields to talk to, the leaders of our youth sports leagues, youth softball, youth soccer, etc. And Joe and Aaron, if you think that's a good idea, perhaps we could ask town administration to start communication with our our athletic leaders in town to get those conversations going. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Great.
That's what he needs before vacation.
After vacation.
We have a great team here that can start that.
Yes.
You gotta give me something to think about it.
Oh, sure, just-
Like a hand in the glove.
Mr. Town Administrator, before I hand this back to Chair Spalding, anything else from your perspective?
Thank you all. It's a tremendous amount of work. And as you know, Ray, KBA and PMA have said, and I can testify to in my own experience that the having a citizen committee who is doing this amount of work has not always been norm. And so it just provides a huge amount of value to be able to accomplish what the board has talked about of having a much more, I think, authentic experience for people living in town, that their neighbors are having an important role here, and that it's a two-way street, and it's not just, you know, the town administrator saying, this is your project, yes or no. So thank you for everything you've done, and thank you to the board, as well as thank you to the fire department for everything that they're going through, operating where they are. And I guess I would just like to, you know, agree with and reiterate, as the chair has said, that we appreciate this committee, this FS1 committee, and the select board, there was no option of any site that could be picked that there would not be folks who feel pretty concerned about, worried about abutters, you know, facing down some significant change. Even if it's done well, it's change, right? And so it's supposed to whatever it's worth. I am sensitive to that. Everyone here is sensitive to that, and we will continue to be here for the neighbors of these properties, people in the and everyone else in the community, but especially the folks who live in you know, Deerfield area, that you know, we're still going to be here and are going to want to continue hearing from them of how can we shape this in a way that they think it is either best, or maybe best is a bridge too far for some folks. Maybe it's least impactful, but that we'll continue to be here for them, not just through approval, but because we're seeking approval of schematic design, there's still quite some process of design development where, you know, we really, to the extent we can do so while keeping the project whole, want to incorporate feedback from the neighbors in the community to the fullest extent we can, so that this can be the best project it can.
You want to adjourn your committee?
Yes, I will, with thanks to you all, I will accept a motion to adjourn the select board meeting.
I move to adjourn the select board.
Before I second that, I have to say one thing. In all sincerity, Mary Ann said something at the end of our last meeting. She looked me straight in the face and she said, Joe, we could have never done what that committee did. So thank you again. I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 I yield back my time, Mr. Chair.
Thank you all. We have two things to do. One is I'll accept a motion to approve the July 27, 26 minutes.
I'd like to. No, go ahead.
We're gonna make one small change to the wording. In the Deerfield site, the paragraph, I wrote walking paths, and that is gonna change to perimeter track.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
if that's
And that's
okay.
an amendment to it. Yeah. Okay.
I'd like to make a motion. Before I do, I want to say you two did an outstanding job. All the communication, every single email was answered. It was shared with the whole committee, and you answered them really eloquently, and it was really well done. And with that, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the minutes from the last meeting with that amendment.
Second. Any discussion? We'll pull the board. Jody Petroselli.
Yes.
Ken Ayers. Yes. Peter Bean.
Yes.
Sarah Cantley.
Yes.
John Cumming.
Yes.
Paul Delay. Yes. Nancy James.
Yes.
Ford Spalding. I'm a yes. I would like a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Is there
And I just want to say that these guys crushed it. I didn't think they were going to be able to do it, but you really crushed it, and you got the really second.
There's a second. Any discussion? All the board, Jody Petroselli.
Yes.
Ken Ayers.
Yes.
Peter Bean.
Yes.
Sarah Cantley.
Yes.
John Cumming.
Yes.
Paul Delay? Yes. Nancy James?
Yeah.
And Ford Spelling, I'm a yes. Thank you.
Well done.
We don't need hugs because you don't.